Chapter 657. Because she couldn't sleep all night, Jiang Pingji kept the live stream on. She watched a group of night owls and idle people send bullet screens to kill time. When Yang Si said that, the night owls who were still dozing off in front of the screen instantly woke up. Fat Cat Chili. Wait, what the F*** am I hearing things? What happened to Beauty Xie? Yiwu Yanling. Oh my god, don't scare me. How could something happen to Beauty Xie? How could it be? Today is not April Fool's Day. Nuan Xiang. Although I always feel that Beauty Xie is delicate and weak, he doesn't have the appearance of a short life. How could something happen to him? Cat Demon June. Today is April Fool's Day. I'm not listening. This is definitely a joke designed by the streamer. Yun Ruochen. Wei Xi is dead? As his veteran fan, I absolutely can't accept this result. The livestream room was in an uproar. Although the livestream room only had an upper limit of 150,000 viewers, after several years, the number of livestream fans accumulated was more than 10 million. Wei Xi's Tieba alone had more than 30 million followers. These 30 million fans were live fans, not zombie fans. The Tieba was abnormally active. Although these auntie groups were all here for their looks, the world was a place where looks mattered the most. Now that everyone received the news of Wei Xi's death, they suddenly felt as if two bombs had exploded in their ears. The words Wei Xi's death became a hot topic in minutes. Madam's fan club couldn't wait to rush into the livestream room. Jiang Pingji was also shocked, but her mental fortitude was excellent. No matter how thunderous her heart was, she remained calm on the surface. Tell me in detail what happened. Jiang Pingji's tone was unprecedentedly cold. Every word contained murderous intent. Even though there was a charcoal brazier burning in the tent, one could still feel the obvious drop in temperature. Zixiao is dead? Could it be the group from Chiyu County? Yang Si held back the grief in his heart. He gritted his teeth and endured the surging sourness in his throat. He spoke with difficulty. Hearing that Wei Xi's body had been chopped up and thrown to the wolves as food, and that his bones had been gnawed clean and sent back, Jiang Pingji's state of mind was already unstable. She was as cold as ice, and her murderous intent rose steadily. The livestream room even lost its order. She was not in the mood to care about the explosive bullet screen, and turned her eyes to the two attendants behind Yang Si. Each of them was holding a corner of a piece of white cloth, and the white cloth was wrapped around a heavy object. That was where the smell of blood came from. Yang Si said, "The thieves in Chiyu County threw this on horseback in front of the camp." Jiang Pingji stood up coldly. The two attendants put down the white cloth, revealing a pile of human bones. It was stained with dark blood, and the flesh that wasn't completely eaten was still stuck to the bones. Many places had bite marks of dogs. Jiang Pingji only glanced at him once, and her murderous gaze softened a little. She raised her hand and ordered her attendants to leave. Although Yang Si was immersed in hatred, he also noticed the changes in Jiang Pingji. His gaze then fell on the pile of fresh human bones, and his lips moved for a while. "My lord Zixiao," Jiang Pingji scoffed and snorted. "He's not dead." Yang Si, put away that mournful expression. "This isn't Zixiao's human bones." Jiang Pingji squatted down and took out a piece of bone with blood and minced meat. The audience in the streaming room expressed that they could not stand such a large-scale taboo scene, and they all commented on the bullet screen to protect themselves. "The bone age isn't right." "Bone age?" Jiang Pingji said with experience. "The bone age of this set of bones is at least 35 years old. Zixiao is only in his early 20s. Also, although Zixiao has learned martial arts, he's at most at the level of square dancing. The bone age of this set of human bones is obviously that of someone who has been doing strenuous work for a long time. Moreover, Zixiao is on the skinny side, but this set of bones is different. It's at least a size stronger than Zixiao, so he's not Zixiao." Yang Si. "Not Zixiao? Then where is Zixiao?" Jiang Pingji secretly heaved a sigh of relief, but she appeared calm on the surface. She smiled and said, "I'm afraid he's hiding somewhere, sitting back and watching the show begin." Yang Si's expression twitched. He looked at the pile of human bones on the ground with hidden bitterness, and he secretly gritted his teeth. "This way, Zixiao. What tricks does he want to play this time?" Jiang Pingji rubbed her chin and smiled faintly. "In short, it's definitely beneficial to us." After Yang Si calmed down, he regained his wits. He frowned deeply and carefully tried to figure out Wei Si's train of thought. If Wei Si was killed by the second-in-command out of anger, who would benefit the most? The Red Lotus Group. Because this move cut off the second-in-command's escape route of relying on Lu Shi. In order to protect himself, he could only continue to ally with his old boss, the Red Lotus Group. His old boss was also happy to accept the second-in-command and his troops. Coupled with the convenience of the city gates of Chuyu County, they could delay Jiang Pingji to death. Not long after, Yang Si understood Wei Si's plan. He was angry and furious. Can't he tell me in advance what his plan is? He almost scared me out of my wits. Jiang Pingji said, plans can't keep up with changes. Maybe he came up with this idea on the spur of the moment. Yang Si asked, since Xixiao is fine, then my lord, what should we do tomorrow? Should we directly challenge him to a fight? Jiang Pingji nodded. Yes, our trusted advisor has been killed. We should at least put on a show. I don't want to act. Tomorrow you'll go to the front lines. Yang Si was speechless. He didn't want to act either. Wei Si wasn't dead yet. Why should he waste his feelings? Jiang Pingji continued, Xixiao may have already instigated the one in Chuyu County to defect. Now that the Red Lotus Group is united on the surface, I'm afraid that both sides will suffer losses and fight to the death. We'll challenge them first. On the surface we'll exert pressure, but in reality, we'll bide our time and observe the specific situation. Based on Jiang Pingji's understanding of Wei Si, this person had probably already made a comprehensive plan. If the Red Lotus Group didn't lose everything this time, Jiang Pingji's name would be read backwards. When Jiang Pingji received Wei Si's corpse, the Red Lotus Group outside the city also received the news. The scholar from the Red Lotus Group was not suspicious. Instead, he was secretly pleased. Although Wei Si's reputation on the battlefield was not prominent, he was in charge of the post-war pension and the stationing of the troops. He had a high reputation among the people of Fengyi County. As Lu Shi's right-hand man, he had been hacked to death and fed to the dogs. His corpse had even been sent to Lu Shi. He would wake up laughing even in his dreams. Lu Shi had made him suffer a lot. Now that Wei Si was dead, he could be considered to have regained some of his dignity. The scholar was certain that it was impossible for the deputy chief to side with Lu Shi. Naturally, he did not suspect that there was a trick. The two sides agreed to meet the next day to resist Lu Shi together. Before dawn, Jiang Pingji had already sent someone to the foot of the city to challenge them. The generals and soldiers were ready for battle. Their murderous aura shook the sky and the war drums thundered. Even though they were far away, the people on the city walls could feel the repressed and resentful murderous intent. For a moment, everyone was in a state of panic. The deputy chief's face was a mixture of green and white. Panic and fear surfaced on the surface. The more it was like this, the more relieved the scholar from the Red Lotus Group was. Chapter 658. When the second-in-command invited the higher-ups of the Red Lotus Group into the city to discuss the grand plan, the Red Lotus Group agreed without even thinking about it. However, they were a little more cautious. They brought 2,000 troops into the city, while the other 30,000 troops remained outside the city. If anything went wrong, these 30,000 troops would rush into the city at the first instance. The second-in-command and the military advisor of the Red Lotus Group did not get along very well. Both were fed up with each other, but the current situation was unique and they had no choice but to work together. The scholar had already secretly made up his mind. After they beat back Lu Shi, he would be the first to capture the second-in-command and interrogate him. Now, for the sake of the bigger picture, he could only endure for the time being. He would let this boorish fellow run wild for a few more days. The scholar was secretly calculating. How could he know that the second-in-command was also plotting against him? Although the scholar and the others had brought 2,000 men with them, these 2,000 men were no match for the 30,000 troops in the city. On the surface, the two of them feigned civility, but in reality they each had their own plans. No matter how the military drums sounded outside, the second-in-command still guarded the city and refused to come out. The soldiers guarding the city even cursed him loudly outside. Inside the city, the second-in-command held a banquet. The dancers and singers sang and danced to liven things up. At the same time, a group of prostitutes and prostitutes served them from the side. The drumming outside the city was like thunder. Even from such a distance one could still hear it if they listened carefully. After 3 rounds of wine they began to talk about the main topic. The second-in-command had a bitter expression on his face. He secretly rubbed his hands and grabbed the scholar beside him to complain. He didn't dare to say that he had kidnapped the hierarch in front of everyone, so he could only change the topic and make things difficult for himself. On account of the fact that they were from the same bloodline and were like brothers, he had to help him defeat Wuxia outside the city. The scholar's smile was very stiff. He wanted to withdraw his hand, but the second-in-command held it tightly and could not do so. Don't be anxious. Thief Lu only has 10,000 troops. How can he be a match for us? The scholar forced a smile and comforted him. Actually, as long as our 2 clans put aside our former enmity and work together to occupy the city walls, the traitor Lu will retreat on his own in less than half a month. The second-in-command said, but right now they're challenging us to a fight. If we don't fight, wouldn't we lose face? The scholar said, how much is face worth? As long as we can defeat Wuxia, our sect will be renowned throughout the world. After that, the scholar analyzed Wuxia's current awkward situation in detail, as if he was giving pointers to the country, and his words were reasonable and well-grounded. Everyone in the hall complimented and flattered the scholar, making him feel as if he was on cloud 9. He had completely forgotten about his previous failure. Outside the city, no matter how many people Jiang Pingji sent to challenge them to a fight, the people inside the city held their ground and refused to come out. They were determined to be mute. Seeing that the sky was getting darker and darker, Jiang Pingji's eyes turned frosty. Xianxia hurried over. His footsteps were hurried and his breathing was heavy. He shouted, my lord, I found out the exact news. Not long ago, there was an unusual movement in the Red Lotus Group's camp. About 2,000 people entered Chuyu County. It looks like they're ready to join forces. Jiang Pingji's eyes flickered slightly, and there was a slight smile on her lips. 2,000 people? Are there any important people among them? She crossed her arms over her chest and looked up at the sky. She pondered and calculated in her heart. Xianxia was already prepared. He opened his mouth and said, according to the scout's report, the leader is probably an elite high-level member of the Red Lotus Group. But it's too far away, so the details are not clear. But judging from the clothes they're wearing, there may be 23 high-level members. The Red Lotus Group was not a regular army. Most of the members were poor people. They wore whatever they had. Many of their clothes were taken from the dead and wrapped around their bodies casually. As long as they could keep warm and not freeze to death, it was fine. Who cared if they were clean or beautiful? Therefore, in the Red Lotus Group, those who wore armor or bright clothes were basically people of status and prestige. The scouts couldn't get too close, but judging by their clothes, their identities were about 80% or 90%. Jiang Pingji narrowed her eyes, and there was a hint of danger in her gaze. She murmured, 23. Xianxia continued, although it's not clear how many high-level elites the Red Lotus Group has, just looking at this number, they've taken away more than half. Jiang Pingji sneered softly. In other words, the current Red Lotus camp is basically in a state of no leader? Jing Rong, what do you think are our chances of winning if we sneak attack their camp in the middle of the night? I think we can still fight them even if they have 30,000 troops. She had fewer troops on her side, but the overall conditions were much better. They had enough clothes to keep them warm, enough rations, and the military equipment was of high quality. The soldiers were also well trained. Their numbers were only 1/3 of the enemy's, but in the middle of the cold winter night, the advantage of numbers would be greatly reduced. They had launched a sneak attack in the middle of the night and caught the enemy off guard. Coupled with the crushing quality of the overall team, the Red Lotus Group was still in a state of no leader. She felt that they had a good chance of winning. Xianxia laughed and said, in my opinion, maybe this is what Xiao the fox is planning. Jiang Pingji crossed her arms in front of her chest and snorted. Xiao has already instigated the forces in Chuyu County to rebel. The Red Lotus Group has brought 2,000 troops into the city. There's going to be a good show tonight. The camp outside the city had been sneak attacked by Jiang Pingji, and the city was besieged on all sides and ambushed on all sides. The Red Lotus Group had not died in vain. After making the decision, Jiang Pingji ordered the soldiers to continue challenging the enemy for a quarter of an hour, then sounded the gong to withdraw. Because the people in the city refused to fight for a long time, Jiang Pingji's side had been challenging the enemy for the whole afternoon, so much so that their morale was a little low. She asked the logistics department to prepare an adequate dinner for the soldiers, then let them rest in advance to recuperate and raise their morale again. That night the bright white moon was covered by dark blue clouds. There was not much light on the ground. Jiang Pingji led the whole army out of the camp. In order not to arouse the vigilance of the people in the city, the torches in the camp were still burning. The Red Lotus Group's camp was a full 2 hours' walk from their camp. Now that it was nighttime, the road was difficult to walk, so their pace was even slower. The soldiers guarding on the city wall still did not notice anything unusual. First of all, the torches in the camp were still burning. Second of all, when Jiang Pingji led the troops away, she went out from the back of the camp. The vision of the guards on the city wall was not that good, so they did not see it. At the same time, the city was brightly lit, and the sounds of singing and swallows could be heard. Among the shadows, one could see the graceful figures of women dancing. Everyone had reached an agreement. They were in a good mood and drank to their heart's content. Toasts were exchanged and wine cups clinked against each other. Rough and thunderous voices floated far out of the main hall. The second-in-command was drunk. His cheeks were pink and his nose was red. He rubbed his stomach and the urge to pee rushed to his head. He got up and pushed away the dancer who was attached to him. He said in a loud voice, "You guys eat and drink first. I'm going to relieve myself." Everyone did not suspect anything. Who among them had not gotten up 3 or 4 times to relieve themselves in the toilet? They drank too much, so they were holding in their pee. It was very uncomfortable. Chapter 659. He went to the toilet and secretly ordered his trusted subordinates to deploy troops. He asked them to quietly surround the main hall and avoid the 2,000 spies brought by the Red Lotus Group. Finally, he pretended that nothing had happened and returned to the main hall to continue drinking and having fun with the others. The people in the hall were still drinking. No one realized that countless arrows had been aimed at them and that there was a murderous intent everywhere. The second-in-command was still urging them to drink. The scholar of the Red Lotus Group had already drunk so much that he was sprawled on the table, his clothes disheveled. At the same time, a few dark shadows flipped into a remote house in the city. Sir. Wuxia came out of the room with an indifferent expression. "I'm here. We came late." Sir must have been startled. These men dressed in black and brown were the guards who had followed Wuxia into the city. After entering the city, Wuxia let them do as they pleased. They hid in Chuyu County and did not need to worry about his safety. They would find an opportunity to meet up in the future. What's the situation outside?" One of them said. "They spread the news that Sir was killed and threw a skeleton that had been gnawed on by a wolf dog in front of our camp. Our Lord sent people outside to challenge us all afternoon, but the Red Lotus Group stayed in the city and did not come out. At noon, 2,000 troops and horses entered the city and were well received." Wuxia folded his hands in his sleeves and looked at the moon in the sky. He asked, "Do you know where those 2,000 people are temporarily staying?" One of them said, "The situation in the city is tense. We have investigated many times and have found out the specific location." Wuxia smiled. The corners of his lips curled up slightly, revealing a faint smile. "You have done well. Now listen to my orders. Go and tell those people that the second-in-command of the Red Lotus Group is up to no good." He lured them into the city to surround and kill them. "Tell them to quickly go and rescue them." The guards were puzzled, but they still nodded in agreement. Wuxia added, "The terrain here is remote. I will be fine hiding here. Just do your own things." It was not safe for Wuxia to hide with the second-in-command, so the second-in-command transferred him here. This place was secluded and quiet with few people around. It was indeed a good place to hide and conceal his identity. The guards acknowledged the order and dispersed one after another. In the middle of the night was dark and windy, a murderous night. Jiang Pingji led all the troops. Their equipment was light and they rushed all the way to the Red Lotus Group's camp. The Red Lotus Group's campsite was very shabby. There were very few torches and the campsite was in a mess. There weren't even a few patrolling guards. In this lousy weather, the temperature in the middle of the night was very touching. Most people couldn't stand the cold and found a place to squat. The discipline within the Red Lotus group was lax, and the patrolling soldiers were lazy as much as they could. During the day, most of their superiors had left, so they were more casual. When Jiang Pingji arrived with her troops, there was not even a guard by the camp's fence. Xianxia was so cold that he was shivering. He said shakily, "Could it be a trap?" Jiang Pingji snorted and said contemptuously, "If the Red Lotus group had brains, they wouldn't have been fooled by Zixiao and Chui." Xianxia shut up. Ri's IQ wasn't low, but he would occasionally be tricked by the black-hearted Wei Ci, okay? As for Chui, who was a three-faced spy, he didn't want to comment further. Jiang Pingji's mental brain was developed. She was sure that there were people in the camp and it wasn't an ambush. Order the archers to prepare the fire arrows. Everyone held their breath. Hundreds of archers took out the oiled arrows and lit them. Then they knocked the arrows and drew their bows, shooting them into the air. At the command, the sky was filled with arrows, leaving orange trails in the air. Then they fell into the camp like rain. The soldiers in the camp were still in dreamland. The people on night watch outside yawned continuously. They hugged their weapons and leaned against the fence to sleep. When the second wave of fire arrows fell, the tents were already burning. Only then did someone notice the commotion. They shouted at the top of their lungs, "Enemy attack! Enemy attack!" They were too sleepy. Even though they shouted like that, not many people were woken up. They were in a flurry. When someone blew the horn to signal the enemy, the fire burned from one tent to another with the help of the night wind. Enemy attack! Wake up! Messy shouts and messy footsteps. The crackling sounds intertwined into a soul-stealing song. As the sound of hooves approached, the horses neighed and landed. The gate of the camp was violently broken open. The soldiers on both sides were about to step forward to resist when they saw a flash of silver light. Two clusters of blood bloomed enchantingly. No one would have thought that Lu Shi's army, which had been shouting all afternoon, would launch a surprise attack on the Red Lotus group's camp outside the city in the middle of the night. Dian Yan's speed was not as fast as Jiang Pingji's. The horse he was riding on lowered its head and strode at a steady pace. Although the horse's speed was not fast, its breathing was very steady. It followed closely behind Jiang Pingji and rushed into the camp. On horseback, Dian Yan killed anyone he saw. The two axes in his hands were deadly. He was born with great strength. When the axes fell, he could split a person in half from the middle. Their crooked intestines spilled all over the ground. The battle cries were like a huge stone thrown into a calm lake. With a bang, huge ripples spread out. The fire burned bigger and bigger. It almost dyed the entire camp a bewitching orange-red color. Kill. Because it was in the middle of the night, most of the Red Lotus group's soldiers were asleep. They were awakened by the noise and fire outside. Out of survival instinct, they rushed out of their tents. Their hands were empty. They had no weapons at all. Outside, there were strong enemies eyeing them covetously. Even though they had 30,000 people, they were still defeated by Jiang Pingji's troops. They only cared about escaping and did not resist. Inside the city. According to Wei Ci's request, the guard disguised himself as a member of the Red Lotus group and hurriedly spread the news. At first they did not believe it. But when they saw the fire spreading outside the city, and vaguely heard the battle cries and cries, their expressions changed. Having achieved his goal, the guard slipped away amid the chaos and sat back to watch the show unfold. At that moment, someone in the hall got up in a daze and wanted to relieve himself. As soon as he pushed the door open, he saw that there was something unusual in the dark night. The orange-red light of the fire dyed half the sky red. It was like a burning cloud. What's that? Archie was in a daze. As soon as he took a step forward, his mind quivered and he suddenly remembered. Wasn't that the place where they had set up camp? Archie sobered up from his drunkenness. Cold sweat broke out on his back. Was not all. With the help of the candlelight outside, he vaguely saw some strange figures in the distance. A sense of crisis rose from the soles of his feet to his head. It made his scalp tingle and his whole body tremble. Archie retracted his foot, not knowing how to react for a moment. What should I do? What should I do? What should he do? Archie was so anxious that he was out of his wits. He hurriedly walked back and tried to wake someone up. Halfway through his shout he noticed a pair of malicious eyes staring at him from above, like a soul-reaping messenger. The second in charge snorted contemptuously, got up and strode away. As soon as he stepped out, the door was immediately pulled shut. Kill them. The second in charge's voice was muffled. After a while, countless arrows pierced through the paper window and shot indiscriminately into the room. The arrowheads were still on fire. The arrows pierced into the wine, and the fire spread instantly. Help, help. The fire swept through the room and the screams in the room gradually became weaker and shorter. The second in charge sneered, put his hands behind his back and strode away. However, he had not gone far when he heard hurried footsteps coming from outside, accompanied by shouts of killing. They were getting closer and closer. Ri's face paled. Dozens of people rushed through the heavy vermilion door. It was actually the 2,000 men brought by the Red Lotus group. Chapter 660. Sure enough, it's messed up. This way Zhou Xian has a very strong heart. Xianxia panted heavily as he gripped the reins with all his might to prevent himself from falling off the horse's back. He looked rather pathetic. After being tossed and turned, the originally neat scholar's robe became wrinkled. Every time he took a deep breath, the cold wind would pour into his mouth. Xianxia turned his head to look at Chuyu County. He saw that the night sky above the county had also been dyed orange-red, giving off a dangerous and enchanting light. This is called telepathy. Jiang Pingji stood on the horse with a faint smile on her face. Xianxia spat and said angrily, "What telepathy? I think he's just looking for trouble. Who knows who that pile of human bones belongs to? If we believe that Zhou Xian has been killed, I'm afraid we'll miss the battle. He's good, at least let us know." Speaking of this, Xianxia was also very depressed. Looking at the pile of human bones, Xianxia also thought that it was Wei Si's corpse. He was really sad for a while. If it wasn't for his lord who quickly identified it, he might still be in the dark. Hearing that, Jiang Pingji's slightly pale lips curled into a beautiful arc. Maybe this is also within his expectations. He knows that I won't be deceived by the corpses, let alone miss the battle. After she finished speaking, Jiang Pingji waved the long spear in her hand. The originally silver-white long spear had been soaked in fresh blood. The whole spear was scarlet. The warm fresh blood quickly cooled under the cold wind and solidified into blood clots. It was a little sticky and disgusting to the touch. She put down the long spear as if nothing had happened and looked in the direction of the county. Jing Rong, gather the troops and attack Chuyu County. I'll kill you while you're down. Xianxia said, as you wish. Today Chuyu County was already in a mess. Flames were spreading under the push of the wind. Shadows of people were moving about and battle cries were shaking the sky. The guards on the city walls were also implicated. At this moment, a few black shadows approached the city gates and opened the bolts. They pushed together and heard a creaking sound. The tall city gate opened, reducing the trouble for Jiang Pingji and the others. Your subordinates welcome the Lord. The group of people who opened the door were the guards who accompanied Wei Si into the city. According to Wei Si's orders, they instigated the Red Lotus Group's alliance to break up. Taking advantage of the chaos, they secretly opened the city for Jiang Pingji's army. Where is Zhou Xian? One of them said, Sir has been moved to a safe place and is waiting for the Lord. The corners of Jiang Pingji's lips curled up slightly. Her eyes reflected the dancing orange-red sparks. When the sparks reached her ears, she felt an inexplicable urge to heat up her ears. Quoting the words of the viewers in the livestream room, the streamer's smile was a little weak. Well done, generals and soldiers, follow me to kill the enemy. Holding a spear and slapping the horse, they rode ahead. They fought fiercely all night until dawn. The faint light broke through the night sky, and the earth welcomed a brand new day. The fire burned all night, and now only a few flames were still stubbornly holding on. After the flames licked the ground was scorched black. Gray-white smoke was still rising from the broken walls and ruins. As far as the eye could see, it was a scene of desolation. Jiang Pingji patted the black smoke on Little White's body and muttered, "Little White is about to be blackened by the smoke. As she spoke, she handed the reins in her hand to a soldier beside her and asked him to take Little White away to wipe it down. Xianxia had not slept all night. His eyes had already turned blue and his eye bags were quite heavy. His fair cheeks were stained by the black smoke and he looked dirty. Zhou stayed here last night? This person really knows how to enjoy himself. He followed Jiang Pingji around and he exercised a lot. He rode the horse frequently and the skin on the inside of his thighs was rubbed with blisters several times. That was not all. His face, which had finally become a little fat, had now become thin again. Stubble covered his chin and he looked a little down and out. What about Wuxia? This fellow was really good. He knew how to enjoy himself. This place was remote and quiet. It was not affected by the tangled battle last night at all. The thought of how he was in a sorry state last night, and how Wuxia could still sleep soundly, Xianxia suddenly felt unbalanced. As he spoke, the tightly shut door opened and a tall scholar in blue walked out. Wasn't it Wuxia? My lord. Jingrong. Wuxia did not sleep all night. He paced near the door at dawn and his feet seemed to be grinding a hole in the ground. In a trance, he heard a familiar voice. His whole body quivered and he hurriedly opened the door. It was indeed Jiang Pingji and Xianxia. Wuxia went forward to greet him. Xianxia put his hands in his wide sleeves, turned his head and ignored him. It was Jiang Pingji who reacted. She stepped forward to greet him. Her eyes turned and she looked Wuxia up and down. Jiang Pingji did not say anything, which made Wuxia nervous for no reason. My lord? Are you all right? She asked. Wuxia felt inexplicably guilty. He calmed his mind and maintained a calm expression. I'm fine. Thank you for your concern, my lord. It's good that you're all right. Jiang Pingji passed by him. Her lips moved and she said in a voice that only the two of them could hear, I'll settle the score with you when we get back. Wuxia's body stiffened and his calm expression faintly cracked. Xianxia did not understand. When he passed by Wuxia, he snorted softly. If all things to play, he faked his death and deceived people's feelings. Wuxia smiled helplessly and bitterly. He believed that Jiang Pingji would guess his intentions and seize the opportunity to wipe out the Red Lotus group in one fell swoop, take Chuyu County and unify Wanzhou. Even if the two of them had not communicated beforehand, he believed that they had such a tacit understanding. It was just that, it seemed that he had overreached himself. Xianxia was fine. It was not difficult to fool him. Wuxia believed that he could deceive this person. But his lord could not. He was too shrewd. His experience in his previous life had already told him this. Just thinking about the scene of facing her directly made Wuxia have a faint urge to break into a run. Even so, Wuxia's disguise had almost been exposed, but Jiang Pingji had not completely exposed the thin veil. Wuxia felt that he could still be saved. His disguise had not been exposed and she would not dig out all his secrets. But after what happened last night, he felt guilty. If he had known this would happen, he would have sent someone to inform her in advance. Wuxia felt as if he was sitting on pins and needles. Jiang Pingji, on the other hand, sat firmly in the seat of honor. After a simple meeting, the thing that Wuxia was worried about did not happen. Seeing this, Wuxia secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Xianxia and Wuxia were responsible for the chores after the war. Soon, the two of them were occupied by the heavy work and had no time to think about other things. When counting the number of captives, Xianxia discovered something. Strange, where are the higher-ups of the Red Lotus group? Did you instigate the second-in-command to defect? They had captured more than 40,000 captives. It could be said to be a great harvest, but they were all members of the Red Lotus group. There were very few core members with a higher status. The desk in front of Wuxia was full of documents. His right hand, which was holding the pen, was stiff and sore. He simply switched to his left hand and continued writing. Wuxia lowered his eyes and his thick and slender eyelids cast a little shadow. Wuxia said indifferently, I reckon that he was either burned to death or hacked to death. Anyway, he's dead. Xianxia was shocked. Fox, what did you do this time? Wuxia raised his lips and said, it's a waste of rations to keep him alive. How can he share the burden and relieve the lord of her burden? If we really recruit him, it will just be burying hidden dangers for our side. I'm afraid that he will bite back in the future. If that's the case, it's better to get rid of him as soon as possible and end all troubles once and for all. Xianxia was so shocked that he could not speak. Ras Zhangpingji's messenger, Wuxia recruited him and made use of him completely. After using him, he created a situation where the second-in-command was accidentally hacked to death. Chapter 661. When it came to scheming, Wuxia was no match for Xianxia. After all, their styles were different. They both had hearts. The difference was that one was dirtier than the other. Xianxia was exasperated. All the crows in the world were black. Wuxia, the damned fox, was laughing at others for being black. Where was his shame? Wuxia and Xianxia were so busy with government affairs that their feet hardly touched the ground. Zhangpingji had to think of a way to settle more than 40,000 captives. Otherwise, as time went on, it would be easy for variables to arise. According to the previous plan, some of them would be sent to Fengyi County to be laborers, while the rest would be left behind. Fengyi County and Xiangyang County lacked manpower. Qingda County, which had just been conquered, also lacked manpower. After conquering Qingda County, the matter of rescuing the emperor had to be scheduled. From top to bottom, everyone was as busy as a spinning top. Zhangpingji gave Wuxia a separate task. It was not heavy, but it was not easy either. I promised in Chui that I would give him 10% of the wealth and manpower. Now it's time to fulfill my promise. The Red Lotus Group's wealth will take a few more days to count. As for the captives, Zhangpingji counted the number of captives they had captured. There were about 80,000 of them. Most of them were ordinary people. Wuxia wanted to select 8,000 troops for Enchui. Do as you see fit. Wuxia cupped his hands in acknowledgement. On the afternoon of the 4th day after conquering Chuyu County, Enchui and a few of his sworn brothers walked out of their hiding place in the mountains. Our big brother, District Magistrate Lu, captured a lot of captives. He wants to give at least 7,000 to 8,000 of us. Is he really willing to do that? The group of brothers muttered, their hearts beating like drums. Ran Chui said calmly, he has to be willing even if he can't bear to. If Lu Shi wasn't this generous, he wouldn't have gone far. As soon as the group approached Chuyu County, they were discovered by the patrolling guards. They identified themselves and Zhangpingji personally received them. Brother Lu, how have you been? Ran Chui and the others had stayed in the mountains for a few days and hadn't had time to clean up. They looked a little down and out. If not for their extraordinary auras, they would have thought they were beggars. Compared to the young and promising Zhangpingji, Enchui's image was a little ugly. Ran Chui's sworn brothers did not make a sound. Only Enchui spoke. I'm a straightforward person and I won't beat around the bush. I'm here today to make you fulfill your promise. Instead of feigning civility and probing each other, it would be better to go straight to the root of the problem and get straight to the point. Zhangpingji was not annoyed. Instead she said, Brotherin, you came at the right time. I was just about to send someone to look for you. Thanks to Brother An's help, I was able to take down Qingda County so quickly and capture more than 81,000 remnants of the Red Lotus Group. As for the confiscated money, the account books are also here. Brotherin, please check them. According to our original agreement, I definitely won't mistreat Brotherin for 10 men and money. She knew very well that Enchui alone had contributed 30% to her taking down Qingda County so quickly. Revan, if Enchui didn't come to her door to collect the debt, Zhangpingji would send someone to receive him. Ran Chui held the thick stack of account books in his hands and was secretly speechless. This was probably the most extravagant account book he had ever seen. The account books were not pieced together from bamboo slips. Instead, they were sewn together from bamboo paper of the same size. Our bamboo paper was expensive in Dongqing. It would be even more expensive if it was resold in Nanxing. Archie flipped through a few pages. The records were extremely clear. Every account was clearly recorded. Zhangpingji's attitude was so unperturbed that it made Enchui and his men seem a little petty. Realizing this, Enchui did not flip through the entire contents in detail. He quickly returned the thick account books to Zhangpingji. I'll listen to your arrangements. Brother Lu is an open and above-board person. Why wouldn't I trust you? Ran Chui wore an appropriate smile on his face. Without batting an eyelid, he warmed up the atmosphere again. The two of them were talking. Wuxia came in from outside the hall. The matter he reported happened to be related to Anshui. The 8,100 people assigned to Anshui had been selected. Ran Chui frowned slightly. His sworn brothers also reacted. They all felt their hearts skip a beat. They felt cheated. If Lushi were to be chosen for them, who knew if he would specifically choose the old, the disabled or the seriously injured? What was the use of bringing such soldiers back? Jiang Pingji acted as if she did not see the change in their expressions. She took the initiative to invite Anshui. What a coincidence. Brother, and why don't you accompany me to take a look? Ran Chui forced a smile. Then it would be impolite of me to decline. When they arrived at the drill ground, and Chui realized that he had gauged the heart of a gentleman with his own mean measure. The captives Jiang Pingji had chosen for him were all well-formed and of suitable age. At a glance they were all about the same size. Although the captives looked a little dispirited, that was because they had been defeated and captured. They felt lost and hopeless about their future. This outcome was far beyond Chui's expectations. As far as the eye could see, it was obvious that these captives had been carefully selected. They were all in the prime of their lives. Our brother Lu, and Chui did not know how to react. It was too pleasant, too unexpected. Among the crowd, and Chui even saw some of the middle and small backbone members of the Red Lotus group. They were much stronger than ordinary people. If these people were trained well, they would definitely be able to create an army with decent combat power. Jiang Pingji stopped him from speaking. As long as brother An is satisfied. There's no need to say anything else, lest we become estranged and hurt our brotherhood. Seeing this, Xianxi's expression became a little uneasy. After enduring for a long time, he finally had an opportunity. He secretly tugged at Wuxia, almost gnashing his teeth. Wuxiao, are you siding with an outsider? Wuxia was speechless. Why do you say that? When have I sided with an outsider? Xianxi said, then what's the matter with the people you've chosen for Anshui? Not to mention anything else, they were all young people and some of them looked quite strong. So it's because of this. Wuxia said with a smile. My lord has also promised you don't have to worry. Don't just look at how good these people look on the surface. That's not the case behind the scenes. Most of them are loyal believers or small leaders of the Red Lotus group. They exploit the people, bully their neighbors and commit many evil deeds. If we keep them, I'm afraid it will affect the internal atmosphere of the entire Wanzhou. It's better to abandon them. The most important thing was that they were too deeply poisoned by the teachings of the Red Lotus group. They were basically malignant tumors and they couldn't be left alive. Xianxi was astonished, so shocked that he couldn't speak. Wuxia narrowed his eyes, expressing his loyalty. I'd rather cut my own flesh and give up my life than harm my lord in this life. And Chui still has his uses. If we use old, weak and crippled soldiers to fool him, I'm afraid he'll hold a grudge against my lord. However, if we use these 8,000 young and strong men as an explanation, he won't be able to tell that something is fishy in a short time. We can still make use of them a few more times. Jingrong, what are you looking at? Xianxi had finally regained his composure, but he became strange because of Wuxi's words. Ri's gaze fell behind Wuxia. Wuxia was puzzled at first, then he became flustered. Ari turned his head and saw a very innocent-looking person leaning against the porch. Jiang Pingji had an expression that said, you guys continue chatting, I'm just looking at the scenery. Wuxia was speechless. How long had she been listening? Wuxi's eyes turned and he used his gaze to ask Xianxi. Chapter 662. Wuxia received the hint from Xianxi. He carefully recalled what he had just said, and the color of blood gradually faded from his cheeks. It seemed that he had just said something that he shouldn't have. He tried to open his mouth to change the topic, but his lips moved for a while. He couldn't even say a word. It was as if a pair of invisible hands were pinching his throat, forcing him to swallow his next words. An indescribable feeling spread from his toes and rushed straight to his brain. Jiang Pingji crossed her arms in front of her chest and leaned against the pillar. Her gaze fell on Wuxia with a bit of fierce scrutiny. Xianxi keenly sensed the change in the atmosphere and swallowed nervously. He felt that the atmosphere between the two of them was a little strange. Logically speaking, Wei Xi's expression of loyalty was accidentally heard by the Lord. As the Lord, shouldn't she be happy? Similarly, Wei Xi's expression of loyalty was heard by the person involved. Even if he wasn't shy, he couldn't be afraid, right? In the end, Xianxia felt that he seemed to have smelled something unusual. Jiang Pingji retracted her gaze and said to Wei Xi, "I happened to pass by. You guys continue talking." With that, she simply turned around. At that moment, Wei Xi realized that Jiang Pingji was wearing straw sandals instead of wooden clogs. No wonder she walked like she was floating and didn't make any sound. It wasn't until Jiang Pingji's figure disappeared from his field of vision that Wei Xi slumped his shoulders in a deflated manner. His eyebrows were slightly furrowed. He said to Xianxia weakly, "Lend me a hand." Xianxia wanted Wei Xi to fall, but he held back in the end. "What's wrong with you and the Lord?" Xianxia was conflicted for a while. His eyebrows knitted together. "I think you and the Lord are a little strange." To say it was strange was a euphemistic way of saying it. To put it bluntly, did the two of them have an affair in private? There was a cat scratching his heart, making it itch. Wei Xi rubbed his eyebrows with a headache and glanced at him. "What's strange?" Xianxia pinched his chin and glanced at Wei Xi from time to time. "Could it be that my previous guess was correct? Do you really have some unspeakable dirty thoughts about your Lord? Or does the Lord have the same kind of feelings for you? Although men are popular nowadays and people don't have much resistance to this kind of thing, you're 6 years apart and you're both monarchs and ministers. This matter is not easy to deal with." As he spoke, Xianxia rubbed his hands. Wei Xi was already fuming with anger, yet Xianxia was still coming up with lousy ideas. "Otherwise, Zixiao, you should find someone to marry. If he was worried about his fate, he could take a concubine. At least he would have a woman by his side." The balance of yin and yang was the right way to go. You could have taken the water route, but you chose to take the land route. Although you are older than the Lord, there is a difference in seniority. You can't just suppress the senior. This is disrespectful. If you really want to force it, won't you make me painful? Xianxia was halfway through his sentence when Wei Xi rewarded him with an elbow strike that was neither light nor heavy. Xianxia was caught off guard and his expression was twisted. Shameless sneak attack. Wei Xi chuckled and raised his brows. Take a stroll in the martial arts arena? What water or land routes? This guy really didn't know how to restrain himself when he started talking dirty. He knew even more than that wastrel Fengzhen. Although Xianxia was still alone in his 20s, his private life was quite rich. Xianxia sucked in a breath of cold air and grimaced. "Fine, I'll leave then. I tried to advise you out of goodwill, but not only do you not know how to be grateful, you even made a false accusation." He had to teach Wei Xi a lesson today. When they arrived at the martial arts arena, Xianxia took out his sword, rolled up his sleeves and pulled out his sword to face Wei Xi. Wei Xi returned the favor. Not long after, Jiang Pingji received news that the two strategists were fighting at the martial arts arena. Not only was Jiang Pingji dumbfounded, but the audience in the streaming room was also confused. Zhangchengwai, did I hear it wrong? Why did Xianxia and Wei Xi fight? Aren't they literati? Mala flavor rabbit leg, #picknose. Who told you that literati can't fight? Do you think that the literati of this era are the same as the literati of China after the Song dynasty? They can't carry anything on their shoulders or lift anything with their hands. They have learned the 6 arts of a gentleman. Horse riding, archery and swordsmanship are also compulsory courses. Sauce flavor chicken feet. I think you have some misunderstanding about literati. The literati of ancient times were basically proficient in both the pen and the sword. For example, my idol, Li Bai, was a genuine swordsmanship expert and the most respected in the martial arts world. Think about it, how chaotic the ancient society was. How could they not know how to fight when they could sneer and roam around outside? Otherwise, they would have been crushed to death long ago. Therefore, it's normal that Beauty Ci and the others know how to fight. Country bumpkin, I'm shivering. The person above, please don't mention it. When Li Bai is mentioned, I think of the fear of being dominated by Li Bai's green lotus sword. When we were pioneering, there were always 3 parallel swords. One explosion destroyed one group. Li Bai, the god, fought 25 of them without panting. Senzatsi Pingjian. No, you've all gone off topic, haven't you? Beauty Ci and Xianxia are fighting. Will they be alright? At this moment, the audience in the streaming room remembered the main point of the matter. They summoned Jiang Pingji to resolve the conflict between the two so that nothing bad would happen. Jiang Pingji had an indolent expression and rested her chin on her hand lazily. Two rookies pecking at each other. What can happen? The 150,000 viewers were speechless. My lord, it hurts. Rookies. No, Wuxia and Xianxia had exchanged dozens of blows. Xianxia barely won by half a move. He liked to eat but did not like to exercise. Naturally, his swordsmanship was rusty. Even though Wuxia went easy on him like a flood, he was still exhausted and sweating profusely. After a round of fighting, he was panting like a dog. On the other hand, Wuxia's face was not red and his heart was not beating. No, who was the sickly one? Zhixiao, be honest. What's going on between you and the Lord? Wuxia put his sword back into its scabbard and said casually, what's going on between me and her? You're just being stubborn. Do you really think that my eyes are just for show? You're not the only smart person in this world. Everyone else's eyes are bright. Xianxia panted and suddenly recalled the conversation he had with Jiang Pingji that day. He said earnestly, it's best if there's nothing. The Lord is young and his temperament is not yet determined. If he gets involved with men out of curiosity, you'll be guilty. But I heard from the Lord that he seems to have a sweetheart. After Wuxia heard this, he froze on the spot. His feet seemed to be nailed to the ground and he could not move an inch. A sweetheart? Xianxia nagged and repeated Jiang Pingji's words that day. He hoped that he could use reality to extinguish the possible hidden dangers. Whether it was from the Lord's or Wuxia's point of view, it would be very dangerous if the two of them developed a relationship other than that of a ruler and a minister. Firstly, Wuxia was 6 years older. People would only say that the Lord was young and ignorant. Wuxia fawned on her and shamelessly seduced a young man. He was degenerate. The two of them could have been a ruler and a minister for a lifetime and become a legend. Why did they have to bear eternal infamy? Secondly, the Lord already had a girl he liked. If Wuxia could not stop now, he would not even be able to be a ruler and a minister in the future. Out of concern for his friend, Xianxia felt that it was better to nip the bud in the bud, regardless of whether the two of them had any signs of it. But why did it not have any effect? At first, Wuxia's face was still a little green. As Xianxia spoke, it gradually turned into embarrassment and a faint blush hung on his face. Xianxia was speechless. Chapter 663. There was nothing wrong with it. Wuxia coughed lightly and his expression returned to calmness. Only his ears were bloodshot, so red that tiny blood vessels could be seen. Of course, he could tell who the sweetheart Jiang Pingji was talking about was. Facing the ignorant Xianxia, he felt an inexplicable sense of shame. However, Xianxia's words just now were not without reason. The Lord was still young. She was in her teens and in her prime. What about Wuxia? How could he be only 6 years older than her? I still have some matters to attend to. I'll leave first. Wuxia's voice was a little vague, as if he was deliberately avoiding something. Xianxia would not let him leave so easily. Changing the topic was useless against him. You haven't explained yet? You want to send me away just like that? Xianxia sat on the folding stool and calmed his breathing. Seeing that Wuxia was about to leave, he hurriedly grabbed his sleeve. His expression became serious and he said earnestly, Zhixiao, be rational. Don't do anything stupid. Wuxia smiled. It was like the sunlight that melted away ice and snow. It was neither glaring nor warm and the temperature was just right. I know what I'm doing. She'll understand when she's older. In another 5 or 6 years he would be 27 or 28 years old. He would be about to enter middle age. She would eventually lose interest. Xianxia naturally would not pester him when he heard him say that. It was fine as long as Wuxia knew what he was doing. Heaving a long sigh of relief, Xianxia sat on the folding stool. He stretched out his legs and hung them down without a care for his image. He hummed a strange tune. While he was feeling pleased, he was caught off guard. His lord's voice came from behind him. Where's Zhixiao? Xianxia was so scared that he almost fell off the folding stool. Fortunately, he knew how to maintain his appearance and restrained himself from embarrassing himself. He got up slowly, flicked his sleeves and folded his sleeves in a bow. Zhixiao said he had something to attend to, so he left first. My lord, are you here to look for him? Jiang Pingji crossed her arms in front of her chest, and the corners of her lips curled into an inexplicable smile. No, I'm here to look for you. Xianxia was speechless. Wait, the atmosphere felt a little off. Inexplicably, Xianxia had an illusion that Jiang Pingji was here to settle scores with him. No, maybe it was not an illusion. Jiang Pingji didn't say anything. She just stared at Xianxia with a faint smile, making the latter's hair stand on end. After a while she said, Jingrong, do you still remember the sweetheart I mentioned before? Xianxia, wait, please don't tell him that the so-called sweetheart that the Lord mentioned is Wei Ci, right? His face darkened. He carefully recalled the image of the person Jiang Pingji had described. The more he thought about it, the more hopeless he felt. Yuan Zixiao. Xianxia paused for a moment, not knowing how to persuade him. He was also a person who had been in the prime of his youth, so he knew the temperament of young people. They loved to be stubborn with others. The more the outside world tried to stop them, the more it stimulated their competitiveness. To the Lord, perhaps she liked Wei Ci because she was attracted to his looks. She only felt that he was good-looking. At most it was 80% curiosity and 20% fondness. Once there was a strong external force obstructing them, it would trigger the Lord's stubborn temper. Even a 20% liking would turn into a 100% liking. After all, you're both men. Have you thought about how the two of you will carry on the family line in the future? Xianxia spoke weakly. He and Wei Ci were best friends, so he could persuade him not to worry too much. However, he could not do so when it came to Jiang Pingji. Jiang Pingji said, Why can't I? Zixiao is not a sentimental person. I don't say that he will be faithful to one person until the end, but if you have the idea of letting other women carry on the family line for him, I'm afraid that all your efforts will be in vain. You'll have schemed for nothing. Xianxia obviously misunderstood. He said vaguely and embarrassedly, My lord still has many years to live. Why delay yourself in Zixiao? You're still young. He's 6 years older than you. His lord, who was 27 or 28 years old, could still be considered young and promising. However, Wei Ci would be in his early 30s at that time. They were really not suitable for each other. Xianxia only felt that he had tried his best to persuade her. He had said everything that needed to be said, but the person in front of him did not care at all. She said, Of course I won't let other women touch him. I have a serious obsession with cleanliness. Xianxia did not know what obsession with cleanliness was, but he could understand some of it based on the context. He could not help but have a headache. He finally understood. It must be that his lord lacked physiological knowledge. She did not know that men could not have children. Perhaps his lord thought that 2 men could also have children? Zixiao is a man. My lord is also a man. He felt that it was a little ridiculous that he was explaining this to a young man who was almost 18 years old. Jiang Pingji was amused. And then, Xianxia said, Men can't have children. Jiang Pingji said, I know. So, Xianxia was almost choked to death by her words. He could not breathe. She knew that men could not have children, but she did not allow Wei Ci to have children with other women. Was Wei Ci going to die without descendants? He simply gave up and said, You and Zixiao are both men. It's impossible for you to have children. Jiang Pingji lowered her eyes and snorted. She said, Wrong. Xianxia was stunned. What was wrong? It's true that Zixiao is a man, but everything else is wrong. Even though Yangxi's IQ was above that of ordinary people, he felt that his brain was not enough to process it at that moment. He could not react at all. He had just said, My lord and Zixiao are both men. It's impossible for them to have children. But his lord had said, It's true that Zixiao is a man. Everything else is wrong. In other words, my lord is a man was wrong. It's impossible for them to have children was also wrong. He was terrified to think about it carefully. Yangxi's expression changed again and again. His mind was in a mess. It was as if someone had thrown hundreds of hornets' nests at him. The bees were buzzing non-stop. My lord. Yangxi was so scared that he could not even speak properly. Jiang Pingji blinked and said, I still have something to do. I'll leave first. After she finished speaking, she left Yangxi, who was stunned by the bombardment, and waved her sleeves without taking away a single cloud. The audience in the livestream watched the whole process. They were basically divided into 2 factions. One was worried that the streamer's gender would be exposed, while the other was worried that Xianxia would be scared silly. Huang Shaun, a man of few words. This is bad. If Xianxia knows the streamer's gender, will he run away? Wen Ku Rin Han Wenqing. Not considering the power of the streamer's father, the streamer herself can be considered the lord of a prefecture. She has tens of thousands of soldiers in her hands. Xianxia is a scholar. How can he run? Run away with his head? The streamer is black-hearted and ruthless. Wuxia is ruthless and ruthless. If the two of them work together, they won't be able to escape even if they grow wings. Zhou Xian, a man of eloquence. I don't understand. Why did the streamer reveal her gender at this time? Buxiao, a man of integrity. I can understand. The streamer has now recovered all of Wanzhou. Although she can't crush all the heroes, she can't be taken lightly either. It's wise to reveal her true identity at this time. Before she is officially exposed, she can let the people around her be prepared. Obviously, through the previous test, Xianxia could accept the setting that Jiang Pingji was a woman. As long as he could stabilize the few scholars under him, the rest would be easy to handle. Chapter 664. Some were worried and naturally some felt sorry for him. Wang Jieshi, I feel sorry for Xianxia. He's probably scared out of his wits. Even the onlookers were fooled by the streamer, let alone him. Clever and skillful Yu Wenzhou. Actually, I'm thinking, perhaps Xianxia was frightened not because the streamer is a woman, but because such a burly, heroic, valiant and battle-savvy lord is actually a woman. Can you imagine the King Kong Barbie version of Neza? Lao Ciji Lianming. Previous poster, all of you are toxic. Haha, speaking of which, the streamer is almost 18. How's her cleavage? There's also her monthly menstruation. It seems that she hasn't mentioned it even though I've been following the updates for so long. Gui Kai Guo Fengxiu. Speaking of this, I suddenly remembered something that the little angel Li Hanmei said. It can be said to be a classic saying. Such a stalwart man as the Lord disguised as a woman hasn't had a good look yet. Don't you think it's funny? Jiang Pingji glanced at the live stream and secretly rolled her eyes. Streamer V, prepare early. I plan to officially confess my identity at this alliance meeting to rescue the emperor. I'll beat up whoever dares to make noise. It's a little exciting to think about being appointed as the governor of Wanzhou as a woman. On the other side, Xianxia was already scared out of his wits. Just as the audience in the livestream complained, he didn't know whether the lord is actually a woman, or such a lord is actually a woman was scarier. He hurriedly looked for Wuxia. He stammered and only asked after a long while. My lord, my lord. Xianxia stammered for a while. Wuxia was at a loss and wished he could say it for him. Wuxia held the brush with both hands and wrote well. He asked, what's wrong with the lord? He handled official affairs quickly. She did two things at once and did not interfere with each other. Xianxia quietly made a circle with his hands in front of his chest. His posture looked extremely wretched. Woman. Wuxia's hand paused and he nodded. Xianxia's face darkened. He wished he could grab Wuxia's collar and ask, when did you know? I knew it from the beginning. Wuxia asked him calmly, you couldn't tell? Xianxia was so angry that he wanted to laugh. He felt that everything he had experienced today was absurd. It was a nightmare. How can I tell from her appearance? Xianxia felt depressed. If he was blind, then wouldn't everyone in the world be blind? During the Battle of Qingde County, I was in the vanguard with the Lord. Where did she have any trace of being a woman? Charging more fiercely than anyone else, killing more ruthlessly than anyone else, using more strength than anyone else, and acting more arrogantly than anyone else. Was this how a noble lady of an aristocratic family behaved? Wuxia's gaze flickered and he said, who told you that women can't fight bravely and well? Xianxia choked on his words and almost couldn't catch his breath. You knew from the start that she was a woman, yet you still pledged loyalty to her. Are you crazy? At this point, Xianxia felt as if his heart had been shot by another arrow, because he had once joked with Jiang Pingji that he looked forward to the ascension of the throne when she gave birth to the emperor concubine. Damn, he had such a cheap mouth. Wuxia didn't care at all. His thick and slender eyelids drooped slightly. He said calmly, she led the troops to take down Xiangyang district. She conquered Qingan district, Maolin district and Jiaoping district in 3 battles. She took down Shangyang County from the Feng family and took down Qingde County in half a month. In a year and a half she has become the de facto lord of Wanzhou. She has tens of thousands of soldiers in her hands. She has the right to compete for the divine tripod of Jiuzhou. You know my aspiration. I only hope that the world will be unified and the rivers will be clean and the seas will be peaceful. As long as I can achieve my aspiration, what difference does it make to me if the Lord is a man or a woman? Xianxia was speechless and couldn't answer. After a while he asked in a low voice, "Who else knows about the Lord's gender?" "Only Ciu and Huayu. The others don't know." Wei Ci stopped writing and spread out the bamboo slip that he had written. He dried the ink and said, "But even if the others know, they probably won't have much of a reaction. Feng Zisher has a prodigal character. He's unrestrained and does whatever he wants. He sees the secular world as dirt. Qiguan Wenjing, even if he doesn't know the truth, I'm afraid he's aware of it. As for Su Xiaoyu, he has an extraordinary friendship with the Lord. He's loyal and has accompanied the Lord since she was born. How could he have a change of heart?" Xianxia was surprised. Feng Huayu actually knows? He had been worried about Feng Jin just now. After all, based on Feng Jin's upbringing, this person was the most unlikely to accept the current situation. What happened in the end? He was someone in the know. Wei Ci said very calmly, "Yes, he knows." Ci listened to Huayu's idle talk. His family's Chongqing was born during the earthquake. Shangjing was destroyed. 9 out of 10 houses collapsed and there were countless casualties. Huayu's eldest daughter, Chongqing, was personally delivered by the Lord. Do you think he wouldn't know? Xianxia was speechless. He felt that his worldview had suffered a devastating blow. After calming down, Xianxia suddenly remembered something. The Lord has hidden it from the world for so many years. Why did she suddenly tell me? Wei Ci said, "You still don't know? The power of the governor of Wanzhou isn't big, but it's not small either. It's just the right time to expose her identity. Let me tell you, I'm just testing the waters and testing the bottom line of acceptance. Just wait, before the rescue mission is over, the Lord will definitely reveal her identity." Xianxia rubbed his eyebrows. There was too much information. He needed time to calm down. The Lord is so calculative. Thinking of the women's camp, he couldn't help but smile bitterly. It turned out that she had already started planning and laying the groundwork. How could I have gotten to this point without some calculation? Wei Ci knew that not only could she become the governor of the province, but she would also become the ruler of the world and compete for the final winner of the 9 provinces' divine cauldrons. Xianxi's mind was in a mess. He found that once he accepted the setting that the Lord was a woman, it seemed quite interesting. At least, when Jiang Pingji slept with Wei Zixiao in the future, Xianxia wouldn't have to be so conflicted. Thinking of this, he suddenly remembered something. How is the relationship between the Lord and the old master? Wei Ci glanced at him and said, "Not bad." Xianxia pinched his chin, his heart bubbling with black water. "I heard from Feng Huayu that the Lord has a brother born of a mistress." If he didn't know Jiang Pingji's gender, Lu Shi and Jiang Pingji's father and son power was clearly divided. Xianxia wouldn't have thought much about it. But now he was a little worried. No matter how good a daughter was, she was still a daughter. After all, she had to get married and have children. How could the child be better than a son? Wei Ci looked down, his eyes filled with a cold light. "I know what you're worried about. That bastard is indeed a hidden danger." If he knew his place, Wei Ci couldn't be bothered with him. If he was tormented, he didn't mind being more ruthless. If the Lord wanted to blame him, that would be for the best. The two of them would take the opportunity to cut off all the ties that shouldn't exist. Under such an atmosphere, Jiang Pingji received further instructions to rescue the emperor. Many forces prepared to gather at Huangshui to discuss important matters. Huangshui. Jiang Pingji glanced at the map of Dongqing. Huangshui was a tributary of Dongqing's mother river. It was only a little narrower than the main trunk. Chapter 665. After conquering Qingde County, Jiang Pingji did not immediately set off to rescue the emperor. Instead, she spent half a month stabilizing her power. She generously gave the 8,000 captives and 10% of the money to Enchui, making him feel a little embarrassed. Enchui was a man with many tricks up his sleeves. He emphasized kindness and authority, and he was clear about rewards and punishments. He handled the 8,000 captives well. He stayed in Qingde County for 2 days, then left with his men and money heading for Huangshui. Jiang Pingji was so busy that she had no time to think about her personal feelings. Wei Xi, on the other hand, heaved a long sigh of relief. The biggest gain from attacking Qingde County this time was not gathering the territory of Wanzhou, but taking over the manpower of the Red Lotus Group. Tens of thousands of captives were nothing in other large-scale battles, but for Jiang Pingji they were still very beneficial. After a whole year of rest and construction, Fengyi County was now the most prosperous and developed place in Wanzhou. Shangyang County was second and Qingde County was at the bottom. Qingde County had been exploited by the Red Lotus Group many times, and there was a heavy population loss. To attract more refugees and develop the local economy, development and construction became the top priority. Jiang Pingji racked her brains for half a night, planning to assign the people under her to various places. I'm still too short of manpower. I hope I can poach some good people from the alliance meeting to rescue the emperor. Even though Jiang Pingji was energetic and full of physical strength, she was so tired that her eyes were bloodshot when faced with such a big problem. Fortunately, she had the experience of starting from scratch. She had accumulated a wealth of experience in the construction of a county. Other areas could be slightly modified and then copied. Fengyi County had an iron mine, and Qingde County also had a natural advantage. It was rich in coal, so she could make use of it. However, the most important thing at the moment was to select new soldiers and assign the captives to reclaim wastelands, build roads and build houses. Although she had taken over Qingde County, it was actually not easy. The entire army had barely stopped moving and the soldiers were exhausted. After taking over Qingde County, she still had a lot of things to do. Settling down the captives and squeezing their labor was just a small matter. Jiang Pingji had more troublesome matters to deal with, such as the aftermath of the soldiers who died in battle, the compensation for their families, and the arrangements for the injured and disabled soldiers. It would be spring in a month or two. She could temporarily stop the progress of other matters, but she could not delay the arrangements for the spring plowing, the selection and training of the new soldiers, and the arrangement of manpower in each county. Although she had become the actual governor of Wanzhou, it looked glorious on the surface. On the inside she was treading on thin ice and walking on a tightrope. If it came down to it, she didn't have enough troops. Something went wrong, she would be in a terrible situation. 20 to 30,000 soldiers could guard a county, but it was difficult to intimidate a prefecture. Therefore, the recruitment of new soldiers and the expansion of military strength were the top priority at the moment. Under the pressure of the heavy workload, a few strategists were so tired that they wanted to move their homes to the government office. Jiang Pingji also found it difficult to rest. Apart from these matters, Jiang Pingji also had to coordinate the troops in various places and mobilize the troops to prepare for the rescue of the emperor. But, give me an all-purpose shovel. Jiang Pingji hated official business the most. Instead of dealing with words all day, she would rather have a good fight with someone. What does my lord need a shovel for? Xianxia was surprised. Ever since Xianxia found out about Jiang Pingji's true gender, he thought that he would be very awkward, but it turned out that he had been thinking too much. As long as she didn't deliberately remind him, Xianxia subconsciously treated her as a man. Occasionally when he thought about it, he still felt that it was like a dream. Such a valiant and brave lord who fought against 100 men alone, charged and broke through enemy lines, attacked cities and conquered lands. How could the omnipotent lord be a girl? Every time he had such doubts, he couldn't help but glance at Jiang Pingji's chest. It clearly didn't have the slightest curve. He looked at her face again. Her facial features were regular, and there was a heroic spirit in her eyes and brows. Indeed, she didn't have the masculinity that a man should have. However, nowadays men like to wear flowers and powder in their hair and wear red and green. Based on such standards, Jiang Pingji could already be considered a man. So this girl was fake, right? Jiang Pingji said, using a shovel to poach someone. Jing Rong. Don't you think that we are too short of people? This doesn't make sense. No matter what, your lord is sitting on a prefecture. Not to mention how I can make a name for myself, but I'm not as good as the top, but I'm better than the bottom. Why is there no talent to seek refuge with? She didn't expect the people to seek refuge with to be top-notch strategists, but there should be third-rate talents, right? What was the result? The number of talents that others yearned for was in the double digits, but there wasn't a single mid-level talent. Xianxia didn't know what science was, but he could still understand it in the context. He said, "My lord, have you forgotten that the old master hasn't retired yet?" Jiang Pingji didn't speak. Lu Shi was the magistrate of Chongzhou. He was in the prime of his life. In the words of the audience in the streaming room, he had a car, a house, a successful career, and a mature, steady, and doting personality. He was definitely a wealthy husband. Jiang Pingji was indeed young and promising. She had great potential, but how could she be more attractive than a ready-made successful person like Lu Shi? If they really wanted to seek refuge with the Lu family, Lu Shi would be their first choice to seek refuge with. Xianxia thought that he had given her a blow and eased his tone. "My lord, don't be anxious. This matter needs to be discussed at length." Compared to talent, Xianxia was more afraid of a lack of time. If they were given enough buffer time and development time with Wei Xi's connections and the talents they nurtured themselves, would they be afraid of a shortage of people? Jiang Pingji nodded, her brows slightly furrowed. That's true. Haste makes waste. He had plenty of time to slowly build up. The situation in the world was getting more and more severe. Only by laying a solid foundation could one remain invincible. After Jiang Pingji discussed with everyone, she planned to set off for the rescue of the emperor in half a month. During this period she would go to various places in Wanzhou and be so busy that her feet wouldn't rest. At that moment an unexpected visitor was slowly entering the territory of Wanzhou, approaching Xiangyang district. "Father, I just heard that the war in Qingda County has ended. Lu Shi is really amazing. It's only been half a month." A young man in his early 20s bent over and entered the carriage. His face was filled with surprise and admiration. "If I knew it would be so soon, I wouldn't have changed my route." Their whole family had taken refuge. As soon as they arrived at the border of Wanzhou, they heard that there was a war in Qingda County. The two sides were locked in a fierce battle. To prevent accidental injuries, their family had to change their route and take a detour. They were only half a day's journey from Xiangyang district, but the war had actually ended. A middle-aged man sat upright in the carriage. He looked to be about 37 or 38 years old. The woman beside him had taken good care of herself. At a glance one could tell that she usually lived like a prince. She didn't do any chores. She looked much younger than her actual age. She seemed to be in her early 30s. The woman had an excellent bearing. She was reserved and elegant. Seeing that the young man's head and shoulders were stained with snow, she couldn't help but raise her hand to brush them off with a handkerchief. The middle-aged man stroked his beard and chuckled. "Ah, a son should be like this. Lu Zhongqing is so blessed." Chapter 666. Take it. Don't freeze. While the father and son were talking, the woman handed the hot water to her son. "Thank you, mother." The woman smiled kindly. The atmosphere of the family was harmonious. The young man touched the hot water. His cold palms were coaxed into warmth. He thought of something and said with a smile, "Fortunately, Lu Shi provided enough bamboo paper. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to take those treasures with me. I could only leave them behind." The middle-aged man said, "Even if I leave you behind, I won't leave behind the treasures of the rest of my life." The young man was speechless. What a father! Thinking of the suffering he had endured these days, the young man was also depressed. "Father, who is this Lu Shi?" The young man held the hot water in one hand and rested his chin on the other, puzzled. "Lu Shi is just a district magistrate, but now he has taken over the whole of Wanzhou. It's obvious that he's ambitious. What's the difference between him and Huang Song? Fifth granduncle is on Huang Song's side. Is Lu Shi more reliable than Huang Song? He came all the way to Xiangyang district. So cold." The middle-aged man raised his eyebrows and frowned. "How can it be the same?" The young man heard this and subconsciously tensed up, afraid that his father would reprimand him. In front of outsiders, the middle-aged man was a man of few words, but in front of his family, he was not stingy with his words. "You only see Lu Shi and forget that he has another identity. Lu Shi's son. Lu Shi only has Wanzhou, but Lu Shi has Chongzhou and Hu County. How can we underestimate this father and son pair?" The middle-aged man looked down and stroked his beard. "Huang Song is indeed good, but I don't like his temperament. Moreover, Luxia has saved my life. Who else should I choose but him? The middle-aged man was Qing. That year he rushed to Shangjing with his wife. On the way they were chased by strange enemies and almost lost their lives. Coincidentally, Jiang Pingji was nearby. She conveniently rescued the couple, and the two families formed a good relationship. Qing brought his wife and child to Xiangyang district to seek shelter with Jiang Pingji. He was originally the district magistrate of Sui and county in Fufeng County of Haozhou. Because he hated the intrigue in the officialdom, he was not promoted. Not long ago he encountered a troublesome matter. Qing had an uncle who was even younger than him, Qingjing. His courtesy name was Yumo, and he was also the fifth great-uncle that the young man mentioned. Qingjing was loyal to Huang Song, and Huang Song tried to use Sui and County as a springboard to encroach on the entire Fufeng County. If that was the case, he didn't mind. As long as the people under his rule weren't harmed, he could resign, retire, and hand over Sui and County. After all, with the current situation, he, a mere county magistrate, could not protect this territory. However, after a few attempts, Qing realized that it was impossible to fire him and leave. Once Huang Song conquered Fufeng County, he would force his way in. How could that do? Qing received the secret letter from his uncle Qingjing. After pondering for a long time, he decisively packed up his belongings and prepared to flee with his family. Qing handed over Sui and County to Huang Song for the sake of his uncle, Qingjing, hoping that he would treat the people well. Qing had never thought of returning to the Langia Qing clan because Langia County was also an important place for military strategists. Now that the world was in chaos, that place was even more unsafe. After much thought, Qing set his sights on the largest force in the north, the Lu family. He immediately decided to seek refuge with Lu Shi. Firstly, he and Lu Shi had been friends through letters for several years. They were gentlemen's acquaintances and he trusted the Lu family. Secondly, Dongqing was fragmented internally and various forces were rising. The Lu family kept a low profile and their overall strength was the strongest. Seeking refuge with the Lu family gave him a sense of security. Thirdly, Lu Shi had saved the couple's lives. Based on the principle of not leaving fertile water to outsiders, of course, he would prioritize the Lu family. Why didn't he seek refuge with Lu Shi? Lu Shi and Lu Shi were father and son. It didn't matter who they sought refuge with. Of course they would choose the closest one. The young man listened to Qing's words and muttered, "I thought that the person favored by the fifth uncle would definitely not be bad." Thinking of Qing frowned. To be honest, he still had a grudge against Huang Song's birth as a eunuch. He really couldn't understand why Qing would choose such a lord. Not long after, Xiangyang district was within reach. Qing's convoy consisted of dozens of carriages. Looked mighty and powerful. Without any suspense, they were stopped by the guards at the city gate and asked to check their belongings. Qing was very cooperative and led his wife and children out of the carriage. The guard lifted the curtain of the carriage to check. His eyes were filled with astonishment. The carriage was filled with bamboo slips and books bound with bamboo paper. It was stuffed to the brim. No wonder the horses had such a hard time pulling the carriage. It was so heavy. The guard was not blind. Those who could afford to read were mostly from well-to-do families. Those who had so many books were definitely from noble families. Qing reported his family name. When the guard heard it, he didn't dare to delay and quickly sent someone to inform the big shots in the government office. The other party claims to be from the Qing family of Langia. His name is Qing? Suku had been busy all night last night. His eye bags were swollen and bruised. He looked like he had overindulged in sex and injured himself. He wanted to catch up on sleep and fight again when he woke up, but the messenger told him that Qing had arrived. Rang was surprised. Who is this person? He had never heard of him. Zuka knew Qing. Although he didn't interact much with Qing, he admired Qing's integrity and secretly admired him. Although he isn't famous, he is a respectable scholar. If the Lord knows he's here, she will be very happy. Hearing Suku's words, Rang's interest was piqued. He wanted to meet the scholar that Suku praised. Suku continued, "But I don't know why Master Qing is here. Why did he come to Xiangyang district at this time?" When he saw Qing's convoy and his treasures, his expression almost cracked. This man really had a character. He liked to bring his treasured books with him when he went out. He never forgot to bring them with him wherever he went. Qiguan Rang's eyes lit up instantly. It was as if he saw countless fairies descending from the sky. For scholars who were eager to learn, what could be more attractive than tens of thousands of books? Jiang Pingji wasn't in Xiangyang district. The task of entertaining Qing Qing fell on Su Ke's shoulders. First, he had to clarify Qing Cheng's intentions. Qing Qing didn't hide anything. He told Su Ke and Qiguan Rang his situation directly. Su Ke and Qiguan Rang were overwhelmed by the favor. This was a windfall. Not to mention Qing Cheng's wealth, just the 10,000 books he brought were worth countless treasures. Because Jiang Pingji wasn't around, Su Ke and Qiguan Rang had a private discussion. They arranged for Qing Cheng's family to stay in the best house in the district. The two of them were not idiots. Talents who came to their territory were their people. How could they let a cooked duck fly away? Idiots? Huang Song was shot in the knee for no reason. Qing Qing accepted it with a smile and settled down with his wife and children. Su Ke turned around and sent an urgent secret letter to Jiang Pingji. Although Qing Qing wasn't an employee that could be exploited, he could help Jiang Pingji train employees that could be exploited. Thinking of how busy he had been during this period of time, Su Ke wished that his lord could grow wings and fly back right now. Chapter 667. Knowing that the cooked duck. No, Qing Qing had brought his family to Xiangyang district. Jiang Pingji still felt like she was in a dream. She looked at the messenger dumbfoundedly, then looked at the secret letter in her hand. It was an important letter that Su Ke had sent urgently. Who did you say came? The messenger repeated what he had just said. Although Jiang Pingji did not completely lose her composure, she could not help but smile. This Qing Qing was not an ordinary person. Yang Si looked at Jiang Pingji's expression and made this speculation. Congratulations, my lord. It was a good sign that someone had taken the initiative to seek shelter. Yang Si folded his sleeves, bowed and congratulated her in a clear voice. Wei Xi lowered his eyelids and said, I'm afraid it's not that simple. Cheng Wenfu was originally the district magistrate of Sui and county in Fufeng County of Haozhou. If he did not encounter a difficult problem, I'm afraid he would not easily abandon everything he has and bring his family to seek shelter with you. I'm afraid there's more to this. Hearing how Wei Xi addressed Qing Qing, Yang Si raised his eyebrows in dissatisfaction. You know Qing Qing? Listen, he directly called Qing Qing Wenfu. Addressing someone by their courtesy name was either a superior to a subordinate, a senior to a junior, or a friend of the same generation. What was the relationship between Wei Xi and Qing Qing? The answer was, a friend despite the difference in age. Yes, we've occasionally exchanged letters over the years. Qing Wenfu is not a reckless and hot-blooded person. He was willing to leave the mainland with his family, so he must have encountered some problems. Wei Xi knew Qing Qing in this life and they were friends in their previous life. They had a good relationship and he also knew how important Qing Qing was. I think that my lord should ask clearly before making plans. Qing Wenfu is usually a man of few words and doesn't like to communicate with others. If my lord doesn't know clearly and accidentally offends him, I'm afraid you'll inadvertently offend him. Most talents had a temper. Jiang Pingji did not need to follow their lead, but she could not be careless and offend him. Jiang Pingji naturally knew this principle. Otherwise, based on her sarcastic face and verbal skills, she would not be able to form today's overtime team. Hearing that Wei Xi and Qing Qing actually knew each other, she said, although I have some connections with Uncle Qing, I've only known him for a short time and I'm not clear about many details. If you know anything you can tell me so that I can be mentally prepared. We'll talk in detail later. Wei Xi agreed calmly. Indeed, he had to deal with Qing Qing seriously to avoid losing such a talented person. Normally, Yang Si wouldn't think much of this conversation. But now he knew that his lord was not a pure male. He always felt that the conversation between his lord and Zishao made him think about it very carefully. He was probably scared out of his wits. When he looked at his lord now, he constantly felt that she wanted to sleep with Wei Xi. She threw Wei Xi a look that said, "You're on your own." Wei Xi was confused. Yang Si still had an "I didn't hear anything" expression on his face, ignoring everything around him. Recently he had nothing to do. The live stream was basically about Jiang Pingji and her subordinates working overtime. The content was a little boring. The live stream viewers did not care. They were the best at finding joy in hardship. They were good at finding cuteness from the details and capturing all kinds of emoticons. For example, now. Good facial features Wang Jieshi. If the host had a social platform like Baidu in this era, maybe Xianxia would ask for help. I've even thought of the topic, help from the underworld. My boss wants to sleep with my bad friend. What should I do? Pure and kind Zhang Xinjia. Of course. Come and watch. Lucky goddess Zhang Jiala. Of course. This. Jiang Pingji pursed her lips. Sleeping with someone? Was she that bad? Host V. I'm afraid you've forgotten that Zi Xiao threw himself into my arms. After she posted this sentence, it was followed by 666. And host's heart is shameless. After laughing and fooling around, Jiang Pingji did not forget about business. She dug out the memory of meeting Qing many years ago and carefully speculated. Wei Xi asked her in private, does my lord want to put Qing Wenfu in an important position? Jiang Pingji said, your lord has never liked to keep idle people unless they are family members. Wei Xi was speechless. I've read Suke's letter carefully and have a general understanding. Huang Song's influence in Haozhou was growing. He wanted to use Sui and County where Qing lived as a springboard to get his hands on the entire Fufeng County. This was not a big deal. After all, Qing's fifth uncle Qingjing worked under Huang Song. If Sui and County benefits others, it's better to benefit Huang Song. However, Qing did not stay in Haozhou with peace of mind. Instead, he left with his family. It's mostly because he doesn't want to work for Huang Song, or rather, he doesn't like official strife. Huang Song was currently short of manpower. If Qing became Huang Song's subordinate, he would either be used by him seriously, or he would inevitably be involved in power strife. This was what Qing hated the most. Or Qing could compromise and find a way to resign. However, according to Huang Song's temperament, would he let Qing off so easily? Obviously this was impossible. Even if he agreed to Qing's resignation, he would probably find a way to restrict the personal freedom of Qing's family and restrict them from working for others. According to Jiang Pingji's understanding of Huang Song, the probability of this guy doing so was very high, especially after the incident with Yang Si. Wei Xi said, then, my lord means. Through Jiang Pingji's words, Wei Xi knew that she would not force Qing. But if she did not force him, wouldn't it be a waste of manpower? Jiang Pingji snorted and secretly laughed at Huang Song's bad luck. It was fine to miss out on Yang Si, but now even Qing, who was comparable to a mountain of gold and silver, had been missed. She said, let Qing do whatever he likes. It's not like he's neglecting his proper duties. Wei Xi was surprised. Her tone did not sound like a junior talking to an elder. Instead, she spoiled Qing like a junior. But then again, he was an old child. Shouldn't he be spoiled? Even though Qing was not that old yet. Jiang Pingji's eyes seemed to have a myriad of stars. Mr. Qing has a collection of tens of thousands of books at home. Most of them are precious stocks. Back then I was immature and used bamboo paper as a fee to polish my brush. I begged him to make a copy of the book for me. Mr. Qing did not fuss over it. Instead, he did what he said. Now that I think about it, I feel rather ashamed. I think that Mr. Qing must be an extremely noble scholar. He once said that he did everything possible to collect these unique books just so that future generations could also see the glory of their predecessors. It was not for selfishness or for profit. Since this is the case, why not fulfill Mr. Cheng's wish? Wei Xi did not speak. Through this conversation he knew that Jiang Pingji would not wrong Qing. Instead, she would make Qing continue to sacrifice his life for her. Wasn't it like this in her previous life? There were only a few days left before the army set off to rescue the emperor, but Qing's matter could not be delayed. What if he felt that Jiang Pingji had neglected him and ran away with his family? Therefore, Jiang Pingji rode on Little White that day and rushed to Xiangyang district overnight. The journey was dusty. Even Little White, a peerless horse that could travel thousands of miles a day, was exhausted in the end. She instructed the horsekeeper, prepare the best food for Little White and serve him well. Chapter 668. Without wasting any time, she went straight to visit Qing. Even though Qing was prepared, he was still shocked by Jiang Pingji's efficiency. Uncle Qing, your nephew has come to pay a visit this time. I would like to shamelessly ask for a favor from you. Jiang Pingji went straight to the point, skipping the complicated greetings and small talk. She went straight to the point after a greeting. Qing hadn't seen Jiang Pingji for many years, but he had been paying attention to her news. He had a good impression of her. If someone else asked, he would probably frown, but since Jiang Pingji said so, he asked patiently. Just say it. If I can help, I won't refuse. Qing had sent his wife and children away early in the morning. Only he and Jiang Pingji were in the hall. Jiang Pingji moved the heavy black box in front of her and pushed it in front of Qing, indicating for him to open it. Qing was puzzled, but he did as he was told. The audience in the streaming room thought Jiang Pingji had prepared a trump card. They waited excitedly for Qing to open the box. When Qing unlocked the box with his thin, calloused hands and opened it, the audience in the streaming room was disappointed. What? They thought there was a treasure in the box, but it turned out to be a thick piece of paper that was white in color. Qing was also puzzled. He looked up at Jiang Pingji and saw a peaceful smile on the youth's lips. He couldn't help but frown. When he picked up the knife paper, Qing found some clues from the feeling in his hand. This isn't bamboo paper. He spoke in a declarative tone. In order to steal Qing's tens of thousands of books, Jiang Pingji had secretly provided him with a large amount of bamboo paper. The paper was of high quality. Qing loved books. He had spent most of his time copying books. He had dealt with bamboo paper for many years. How could he not see the difference between the two? Even though the color was not much different, it felt very different in his hands. He could tell with one touch that they were different. Jiang Pingji said, "It's indeed not bamboo paper. Uncle Qing, you can call this paper rice paper." Qing repeated doubtfully, "Rice paper? Is it a new paper made by your family?" "It can't be considered a new paper. It's been made for many years, but it hasn't been announced to the public." "No wonder." Qing nodded as he listened. Suddenly itching to show his skill, he ground the ink and wrote a few words on the Xian paper. Seeing that his semi-cursive was as smooth as flowing water, his handwriting vigorous and powerful, many of the audience members instantly became his fans. Jiang Pingji smiled and asked Qing, "Uncle Qing, what do you think of the quality of this rice paper?" Qing put down the brush and looked at the words on the Xian paper. He stroked his beard in satisfaction and said with a smile, "It's tough but moist, shiny but not slippery, and the ink is extremely moisturizing. It's indeed a good paper. The surface is dense and pure white and the veins are clean and tidy. It is truly a top-notch product." When he moved his brush just now, Qing found that the Xian paper was very easy to melt. If he hesitated a little, the paper would turn into a ball. The words he wrote were full and moist, and the strokes of the brush were as smooth as flowing water, making him unable to put them down. Not only that, the Xian paper was of a uniform thickness without any impurities. He used his fingers to pinch it and it seemed that it could be folded quite well. Qing stroked his beard and said, "Is nephew's paper mill going to sell this Xian paper?" Jiang Pingji smiled without saying a word. She gestured for Qing to open the folded Xian paper. There was still a mystery in it. Qing was surprised. With the incident just now, he was full of anticipation for the surprise that would follow. The freshly made Xian paper was extremely large. There were 100 pieces of paper in one cut and it could be cut according to the needs. The black box that had previously been used to store the Xian paper was not big, so the Xian paper naturally had to be folded into a long strip. Qing unfolded it and found that there were actually a few pieces of paper covered in ink inside. The words on the paper were bold and vigorous, and they faintly revealed an arrogant and domineering aura. Qing said, "Nephew, you've improved again." His handwriting was much better than before. Qing took a closer look at the content on the paper and realized that it was a disorganized article with no content at all. It felt like all kinds of messy words were put together and he could not make out the content at all. To the viewers in the live stream, it was all garbled. He was puzzled and looked at the second piece. It was still garbled. The third piece was still garbled. The fourth one was still a bunch of gibberish code. Qing blinked his eyes in confusion. He did not understand why Jiang Pingji was showing him this. Was he commenting on her handwriting? After flipping through more than 10 pieces of paper in a row, an idea flashed through Qing's mind. He finally found out what was wrong. He quickly spread out more than 10 pieces of paper and placed them on the table. Then he stacked them one on top of the other, revealing only the first row of words. He placed them together and looked at them again. He found that the size, shape, and stroke thickness of the words were exactly the same. No matter how good a calligrapher was, it was impossible for him to write more than 10 words that could be completely overlapped with each other. Nephew, was this stamped with a seal? Ching quickly understood the key point. Only stamped with a seal could ensure that the handwriting was 100% consistent. Jiang Pingji smiled and said, "The principle is the same, but that thing shouldn't be considered a seal." Even though Ching was knowledgeable, he could not figure out what Jiang Pingji was planning. He laughed bitterly and pretended to beg for mercy. "Nephew, don't keep me in suspense. You should at least leave some face for me." Jiang Pingji took out a few wooden seals from a secret compartment in the box. A few words were engraved on them. They were the first few words on the few pieces of paper. She said, "Uncle Ching, you've already looked at the rice paper. Look at these wooden seals. What do you think?" Ching took the wooden seals and found that they were the same size and shape. They were arranged side by side, perfectly satisfying his obsessive-compulsive disorder. He was not stupid. Jiang Pingji's reminder was so obvious that he vaguely had some ideas in his mind. That's right. Why didn't he think of this method? If he used such wooden seals to arrange the content he wanted and printed it on the paper, wouldn't it be an essay? As expected, she said, "A few years ago I was immature. I used bamboo paper to deceive you of tens of thousands of books in your house. I even made you copy them. I don't know how much energy and time it took. After being scolded by my father, I felt very guilty. After a deep reflection, I suddenly thought of this method. If I ask a carpenter to engrave common words as a wooden seal, I can use the wooden seal to arrange the content of the book whenever I want to print a book. I can print a copy in a moment. Isn't it more convenient and faster than copying by hand?" Ching felt his heart beating wildly. He was so shocked that he could not even hold the things in his hands steadily. They fell to the ground with a clatter. Chapter 669. Of course it made sense. Ching was not a hot-blooded young man. He did not take the bait easily, but he had to admit that he was tempted. "My dear nephew, do you know what you are doing?" Ching was silent for 15 minutes. Jiang Pingji was not in a hurry. She quietly waited for his reply. "I know." Jiang Pingji always used her brain when she did things, especially when it concerned her family's life and death. Ching's face showed some fear. He asked, "Since you know, why are you still doing this?" Jiang Pingji snorted and opened her mouth contemptuously. Her words were sharp and unkind, and she pointed out the shortcomings. Why? The lies, flattery, and empty words were naturally for the sake of Uncle Cheng's lifelong wish. He wanted the tens of thousands of books in the library to be passed down to the later generations and known by the later generations. Speaking the truth from the bottom of his heart, he naturally wanted to change the world, get rid of the evils and establish a new order. The world belonged to the people after all. It was not the world of a family. It was not a toy for the latter to play politics, control the world, and do whatever they wanted. The gentry held great power and did not want to be involved in practical matters. They lived a luxurious life and decayed in luxury. Uncle Ching, you are knowledgeable. Do you think that it is only the royal family's fault that the world is in such chaos? Did those who played power behind the scenes not do anything wrong? Ching listened for a while and was stunned. He said with difficulty, "Lanting, you are also from the gentry." Even if Ching agreed with her and had such thoughts occasionally, he did not dare to say it out loud. "To me, the people and the common people are far more important than me and my family. If the latter can be sacrificed for the former, I am willing to do everything I can." Jiang Pingji said calmly, "If the gentry's disaster is not stopped, the world will only become more chaotic in the future. Uncle, have you thought about what will happen when the Central Plains continues to be weak and the barbarians become strong? To put it bluntly, it's not impossible for him to lose his clothes." Cheng's face turned pale. His heart wavered even more. Even his fingers were trembling. Jiang Pingji forced Ching step by step. The audience in the streaming room also felt that the atmosphere was not right. The reticent Huang Xiang. Who can tell me what happened? If I remember correctly, the host was just recommending printing in Xian paper to Qing. How did the topic change so suddenly? Feels like the atmosphere is frozen. Gentle and pleasant Han Wenqing. Previous poster: stop talking, stop playing games and read more books. For now, printing is nothing. You can buy a photocopier if you have money. But in the era of the host, printing is a provocation to the entire social system. Do you understand? Huang Shaon of a few words. I don't understand. Don't you also play games? You have the same ID. Who doesn't know each other? Reticent Yu Wenzhou. Simply the host in the hosts. And I have different opinions. Most of the books were unique copies, which meant that the culture was only passed down within a small circle of people. This was the advantage of the landowning households. It was similar to the solidification of social class. The audience it. And the you and the one and the time. Rote. Clever mind and dexterous hands Yu Wenzhou. In modern times, families with normal incomes can afford to send their children to school. If they seize the opportunity, they can always climb up the social ladder. In ancient times, it was different. Here I'm seriously criticizing the theory that studying is useless. How can China, which was full of opportunities 20 years ago, be the same as China now? The children of farmers were farmers and the children of gentry were gentry. The landowning households were superior to ordinary people, and books were a very important medium. If books were no longer the privilege of the minority, what do you think the result would be? The host was under a lot of pressure. Just like in a game, it's better to line up well than to play well. In this era, it could also be explained in one sentence. It was better to be born well than to study well. No matter how talented one was, no matter how smart one was, one's background alone was enough to crush a bunch of talents. For example, Su Ku Qiguanrang and Yang Si, who worked under Jiang Pingji. Su Ku had once been a slave and there was an indelible mark on his face. This was a stain on his life. Qiguanrang was of mixed blood. He was the son of a barbarian from the northern borderline and a woman from the border of the Central Plains. Needless to say, Yang Si had a mother who was suspected to have been born in a brothel, and grew up being fed by hundreds of families. If they were born in times of peace, the three of them would probably die of depression. Even if they had a good mentality, they would not be able to stand out in this lifetime. Wei Xi and Feng Zhen's families were in decline, and they could barely be considered as the down-and-out gentry. Tracing back to their ancestors, they had at least one worthy ancestor. As for Feng Jin, who was born into a wealthy family, his style was completely different. What Jiang Pingji wanted to do was to break the shackles of background, and make it so that studying would no longer be a privilege for some people. As long as one had the ability, there would be a chance to climb up. Many people could not change their background, but they could change their future. To be a farmer in the morning, to be an emperor in the evening. Even if ordinary people and aristocratic families still did not have the same starting line, at least they could see the hope of being on par or even surpassing them. Books, printing and rice paper? These three were not scary. What was scary was that Jiang Pingji wanted to use them to break the existing system. This was what Qing was worried and afraid about. After a while, his lips trembled and his voice was as soft as a mosquito's. You're crazy. Jiang Pingji was calm and composed. If there are no people, how can there be a country? If there are no countries, how can there be a home? Since ancient times, how many people shouted about serving the country and the people, but in the end, when the dust settled, their selfishness was for the sake of their small family. I want to compete for the divine tripod of the 9 provinces. This is the resolve that a future emperor should have. I don't ask for the world to be the same, but I ask for the 9 provinces to be unified and the rivers to be clean and the seas to be peaceful. Domineering and arrogant, it made people tremble in fear. Qing Cheng's first reaction was that she was too arrogant and egotistical, but his second reaction was that it was only natural. A person who dared to challenge the existing social system and even completely overturn it was naturally a lunatic. Naturally, she was arrogant and egotistical. Uncle Qing, you are a scholar. Qing Cheng was instantly speechless, as if someone had pressed the mute button. I thought you had a cold and unyielding character that was indestructible, that no one and nothing in this world could break it. Qing Cheng raised his eyelids and spoke in a hoarse voice. You don't have to bewitch me. Tell me, what do you want to do? Jiang Pingji's lips curled up. The raw material of rice paper is mostly sandalwood. Chongzhou has a lot of this stuff. The output is 1,000 times more than bamboo paper and the cost is low. Wooden printing and mass production of books. I don't want to do anything, I just want to collect all the books in the world and fill up the library. When the area is stable, I will build a library and set up an academy. I will not care about the threshold or background. I will recruit students of the right age. Qing Cheng's smile carried a hint of mockery. That's it? You want me to be a printer and carpenter? How is that possible? Jiang Pingji blinked and said sincerely, I hope that Uncle Qing can take charge of the overall situation. I hope that Uncle Qing can take charge of the overall situation. I hope that you can compile elementary reading materials, revise the historical records, organize the ancient books that have been lost for hundreds of years, and carry forward the past and open up the future. Your responsibility is far heavier and more arduous than mine. Chapter 670. After Jiang Pingji finished speaking, the scene fell into a suffocating silence. Qing had to admit a fact. He was moved. Jiang Pingji's words hit Cheng's weak spot and pinched his lifeline. Even if he was born into an aristocratic family, he could not refute every word she said. It was like the golden words of a saint, and the future would prove that what she said was true. It was a prophecy. How could mortals refute it? When the audience in the streaming room suspected that Ching and Jiang Pingji had pressed the pause button, Ching asked her in a hoarse voice. Aren't you afraid of being smashed to pieces? Jiang Pingji smiled. What's the big deal about being smashed to pieces? Even if I'm nailed to the pillar of shame in history, no one can stop me from doing what I want to do. Life is only 100 years. I don't want to regret it when I'm old. Whether I'm famous in history or infamous for thousands of years, it's impossible for people to live without desires. It's just fame and fortune. For ordinary people, after 2 or 3 generations, even the descendants would forget the name of their ancestors. But if I live in history, no matter who mentions my name, they must remember that there was such a person. She had reached the peak in her previous life. How could she be willing to be ordinary and unknown in this life? If she wanted to make trouble, she would make it bigger. Not only did she want to influence the present for decades, but she also wanted to change the history of the next hundreds or thousands of years because of her. Unify the 9 states and ascend the throne? That was not enough. Ching could not help but smile bitterly. Young people, newborn calves, are not afraid of tigers. He had thought that Lu Shi lived in Lu Shi's shadow and followed in his footsteps. Now it seemed that she had long reached a realm of thinking that was difficult for all people to reach. Arrogant, there was only one person who dared to use his life to stir up the storm of the times. Jiang Pingji said calmly, the future will prove that I'm right. Whether it's 10 years, 100 years, or 1,000 years, I can wait. Ching was surprised. He knew the real meaning of Jiang Pingji's words. She did not mean that she could live for so long, but she believed that she was right. No matter how far in the future generations would prove that she was right. How confident was she? Forget it. Ching calmed down and realized that his hands were still shaking, and his breathing was disordered as if he had run a long way. His undershirt was already soaked in sweat. I'm old and I don't have the energy to play with young people. Ching hadn't been convinced by Jiang Pingji. The audience in the streaming room couldn't help but complain in the bullet screen. The anchor's hot-blooded and Chunibi words just now made them feel hot all over and their blood was boiling. Why was Ching still indifferent? Scheming Yang Cici, the host's ever-successful trick has finally hit a wall. Everyone should celebrate. Loyal and honest Yi Buxiu. Tia young man, you're wrong. I'll bet a pack of cigarettes on the streamer. Lao Ciji Lianmeng, hey, can you change your IDs? You can't be so ruthless, right? Heart-piercing. Eloquent Zhou Zikai. Keep up with the times, keep up with the trends and never change. Hand speed expert Yuan Zhou. Hashtag tender smile, I've already changed. Gui Kai Guo Fengxiu. To the one above, you should change back to your original ID. This time your ID is even more ruthless. Jiang Pingji didn't understand their jokes, but looking at the bullet screen she could mostly guess that these IDs were the products of natural ruthlessness. Host V, loyal and honest Yi Buxiu, you've guessed correctly. As soon as she sent this bullet screen, Ching, who seemed to have rejected her, spoke again. Even a young man like you isn't afraid. Why should an old man like me who has one foot in the grave be afraid? Other than true scholars, others couldn't understand how attractive Jiang Pingji's blueprint was to Qing Qing. A warrior would die for a bosom friend. Without a doubt, the teenager in front of him was the bosom friend that Qing Qing had been searching for half his life. Qing Qing said with a complicated expression, "I only hope that you don't disappoint your original intentions and don't forget what you said today." The road from humble to supreme was too long, and there were too many temptations. Qing Qing didn't know if the future Jiang Pingji would still not disappoint her original intentions when she looked back. Could this teenager withstand all kinds of temptations? From the beginning to the end, would he not change his original intentions? Jiang Pingji smiled and said, "Of course." Of course she wouldn't change because for Jiang Pingji that was faith. From meeting Qing Qing to successfully persuading him, Jiang Pingji spent more than an hour. Her achievements were still brilliant. When Suku heard the news he couldn't help but tease her. "My lord, you're successful in every endeavor." Qiguan Rang secretly rolled his eyes. He didn't think it was something to boast about. Jiang Pingji threw something to Suku and said lazily, "Don't be happy too early, my big accountant." The bamboo slip floated into Suku's arms. He looked a little confused. A newcomer had joined the overtime team. Why couldn't he be happy? Suku curiously untied the bow on the bamboo slip. When he unfolded it to take a look, his expression almost cracked into pieces. "My lord." Qiguan Rang heard a trace of grief and indignation in Suku's voice. He couldn't help but step forward curiously. He stuck his head out to take a look. "What is this?" He looked at it as he asked. Soon he saw it from beginning to end. He silently lit a row of candles for Suku in his heart. "A proposal," Jiang Pingji said. "I want to hire Mr. Qing to oversee the overall situation. Whether it's opening an academy or a library, books are the most important. I've divided the newly designed printing technique into two types. One is movable type, and the other is engraving. Both have their advantages and disadvantages. Movable type is more convenient and flexible, while engraving is exquisite and clear. As for which one to choose, it's up to Mr. Cheng's decision." Suku pulled a long face. He thought that Qing Qing came over to share the burden with him. In the end he threw him a heavy task that was as heavy as a mountain. Whether it was the movable type that Jiang Pingji had mentioned before or the engraving that she was now dictating, which one of them wasn't a project that burned money. Once this aspect was involved, in the end it would all be piled on him. After all, he was the housekeeper. Suku was quite sensitive to numbers. After calculating the cost he couldn't help but be speechless. Jiang Pingji saw the pain on his face. She said calmly and firmly, "I know that it will cost a lot of money, but this plan is the same as the post-war pension. Even if I have to sacrifice everything I have, I will complete it. Regardless of the cost, I will fully support Mr. Cheng." No one knew better than her how much economic benefits and political influence the popularization of books would bring to society. It could even change the social structure and tear apart the last fig leaf of the gentry. Even if it caused a reign of terror and thousands of lives were sacrificed, she would still do it. Contributions to the present generation would benefit the future generations. In her opinion, anything that could push the entire society forward was worth a try. Even if she, as a pioneer, had to pay the price with her life, she would take it. Suku's expression was solemn. He replied in a clear voice, "Yes, sir." Jiang Pingji rubbed her eyebrows. Ever since she received the news from Qing Qing, she had rushed back with all her might. She hadn't rested until now. "I'll go rest for a while." Jiang Pingji lowered her eyes and was about to leave when the messenger came in to report. Qing Yuan had come to visit. Chapter 671. Qing Qing had 2 sons and a daughter. Qing Yuan was the second legitimate son of Qing Qing and his wife. Qing Yuan's courtesy name was Gong Liao. What is he doing here? Jiang Pingji frowned imperceptibly. Could it be that this second Lang Jun thought that she had cheated his old father, Qing Qing, and was rushing to settle the score with her? Thinking of this, she smiled dumbly. "Xiaoyu, go and test the other party's intentions first." Suku smiled bitterly. He could only bite the bullet and do it. As for why Jiang Pingji didn't show up, Suku had also found a ready-made excuse. His lord had rushed all the way back for Qing Qing. She was extremely tired and had fallen asleep as soon as she returned. The servants couldn't disturb her sleep, so he could only come forward to receive Qing Yuan. It was a perfect excuse. Not only could it save face for both sides, but it could also perfectly explain his lord's laziness and avoidance. It would also flatter Qing Qing at the same time. Qing Yuan had just passed his 20s. His face still looked a little tender and youthful, but the aura around him was quite peaceful. There was a kind of steadiness and calmness that didn't match his age. Suku could be considered experienced and knowledgeable. Just by looking at Qing Yuan's bearing, he felt that he was a loyal and sincere person. After a further conversation, Suku was even more certain of his guess. Not only was Qing Yuan not looking for Jiang Pingji to settle the score with her, but he was also there to recommend himself. Because he was not wrong. He was indeed recommending himself. Buy one get one free. He had abducted the old one, Qing Qing, and he had also gotten a young one, Qing Yuan. My lord, look at how much sin you have committed. Knowing this, Suku couldn't help but be secretly speechless. Young man, isn't it good to be alive? Do you know the consequences of recommending yourself? The Wanzhou overtime team welcomes you. You work overtime every day all year round. The benefits are deceptive and the leaders are unreliable. If the Lord's brain was damaged one day, the workload would increase several times. Of course, Suka couldn't tell the truth. If he scared him away, his lord and other colleagues would fight him to the death. Qing Yuan really didn't know the internal situation of Wanzhou, but he knew how heavy the burden his father had taken on was. If he was not careful, he would go down in history. As a child, how could Qing Yuan bear to let his middle-aged father bear such a huge burden and risk? As the son of Qing Qing, he was one of the people who knew Qing Qing best. He could understand his father's pursuit and ideals. Therefore Qing Yuan did not stop him. Instead, he felt happy for his father. While he was happy, he was also deeply worried. That was why he recommended himself, and took the initiative to seek shelter. Jiang Pingji smiled when she heard what Suku said. What an obedient and sensible filial son. You've met Qing Yuan, what do you think of him? Suku deliberated seriously and recalled the conversation with Qing Yuan just now. Qing Gongliao is steady and careful. He has a pragmatic personality. He's a good candidate. As for how strong he was, it was hard to say. He would secretly test him later. I think Mr. Cheng's son won't be too bad. How could there be any reason to reject a labor force that was voluntarily delivered to the door? Because of the rapid expansion of power, the military strength and development could not keep up with the pace. This caused the foundation to be shaken, which became Jiang Pingji's current hidden worry. What she needed the most right now was someone like Qing Yuan. He was calm and meticulous and would not rashly stir up trouble. Even if they didn't have amazing talents, as long as they worked hard and steadily, they would still become the mainstay of Wanzhou's power. In that case, I'll leave Qing Gongliao to you for the time being. Jiang Pingji's voice was hoarse. The rescue of the emperor is imminent. I'll transfer 10,000 troops and take a few people with me. The official duties in Wanzhou will be heavy. Teach Qing Gongliao first. When he gets used to it, you can throw things to him. Jiang Pingji was already short of people. If she took away part of her family's assets to rescue the emperor, the base camp in Wanzhou would be even more short of people. At that moment, bumping into Qing Qing and his son was like having a pillow when she was dozing off. Even Jiang Pingji couldn't help but applaud her luck. That's good. I guess I'll be a little more free. Suka smiled and teased. He wasn't the slightest bit unhappy about a newcomer stealing his job. In fact, he was happy to see it happen. It wasn't that Suku was careless, but Jiang Pingji had set a good example for everyone. She wouldn't bury anyone's talent. Although she was biased in private, she was very fair in official matters and people were convinced. Suka didn't have to worry about Qing Yuan threatening his position because there was no conflict of interest between the two. If promoting Qing Yuan could reduce his pressure and increase Wanzhou's strength, Suku would do it even without Jiang Pingji's instructions. Yes, I've always been at ease when Xiaoyu does things. With Suka's help, she really didn't have to worry. Look at other people's forces. There would always be some kind of friction within the group. The atmosphere was not harmonious and they held each other back. To give a ready-made example, Yang Xi's old boss, Prince Changsho, was a typical example. On the surface, the internal situation was harmonious, but in private, the undercurrents were surging. You tripped me up and I'll do the same to you. It was like a plot from the palace. They mocked and ridiculed each other, pointing at the mulberry tree and scolding the locust tree. They fought fiercely. Even on Jiang Pingji's side, they weren't considered a family. In fact, there were some discordant factors. For example, Feng Zhen, who was a wanton and unrestrained man, didn't have a good relationship with Feng Jin, Su Ku and the others. Even so, they wouldn't shift these conflicts to official matters. First of all, they had brains and wouldn't let their personal interests get in the way of public affairs. They also supervised and restrained each other. Second, Jiang Pingji wouldn't allow them to do so. She wouldn't interfere with their private relationships. But if anyone were to make trouble in official matters, did they think she was dead? She would throw everyone into suitable positions to shine and make use of their labor force to her heart's content. She wouldn't let any talent go to waste. Jiang Pingji's consistent creed was to do as much as one had the ability. She wouldn't send those who had high standards but little ability off. Jiang Pingji hadn't made an accurate judgment on Qing Yuan's position, so she let him practice for a while before deciding. When Qing Yuan returned home, Qing only knew what his son had done behind his back. "Son, you sold yourself just like that?" Qing frowned. "Do you know why I've stopped you from becoming an official several times?" He didn't like official strife, but it didn't mean that he liked to control his son's life. The reason why he didn't approve of Qing Yuan becoming an official was because Qing thought that his youngest son wasn't mature enough and wasn't capable enough. It wasn't easy for a person who wasn't capable to stand out, even if he came from a good family. Qing Yuan felt guilty. He lowered his head and fiddled with his sleeves, not saying a word. Qing shook his head. "Forget it. What's done can't be undone. Since Lu Lanting, the Lord has accepted you, don't embarrass the Qing family." Qing Yuan lowered his head and said, "Please guide me, father. Do more, talk less, don't be stubborn, ask for advice seriously and learn with an open mind. Don't be fooled by the people around the Lord. They're only 3 to 5 years older than you, but they're all dragons and phoenixes among men. There are benefits to being born into a humble background. At least their temperaments are more mature and stable than their peers." Qing thought of Su Ku. Su Ku had been Jiang Pingji's right-hand man for many years. "Do you understand?" Qing Yuan nodded obediently. Qing was satisfied. His youngest son had a good temperament. He wasn't as unruly as his eldest son. Chapter 672. It turned out that Qing Yuan was gentle and honest. He was indeed an obedient and sensible child. At first Su Ku was a little worried. What was there to worry about? Naturally, he was worried that Qing Yuan would not cooperate. Qing Yuan had just become an official and was young and impetuous. If he felt that he had not been put in an important position by the Lord and was suppressed by a person of mediocre background, he would feel uncomfortable and not cooperate in his actions. If that was the case, Su Ku would have a headache. Fortunately, the scene that Su Ku was worried about did not happen. Qing Yuan was young and inexperienced, but he was methodical and meticulous. Most importantly, he was humble and eager to learn. He would not look down on Su Ku because of his lowly background. No matter how boring and tedious the task was, Qing Yuan could still concentrate. He was simply a little angel in Su Ku's eyes. Which boss and colleague would not like such a good employee who worked overtime obediently and did not complain? Thus Qing Yuan easily gained the favor of Su Ku and Qiguan Rang. The three of them worked very well together. After all, Qing Yuan was inexperienced. Even if he was careful enough, he still made small mistakes in many places. Su Ku and Qiguan Rang did not find it troublesome. They gave him pointers if they could and helped him make up for his mistakes if they could not, making Qing Yuan feel like he was bathing in the spring breeze. At first, Qing Yuan thought that his official career would cause conflict and it would be difficult for him to integrate into the group. Now that he saw it, the people under the Lord were quite easy to get along with. However, today Xiao Yu asked about elder brother's matters. Qing raised his eyelids. He had been busy organizing the books and classifying them in detail recently, so he did not pay much attention to his son. Even so, he knew that his son had been going out early in the morning and returning home late at night. He was busy with government affairs. About Gong Luo? What about him? Qing had 2 sons and a daughter. Other than his eldest son who was an official in another place, his younger son and daughter were still by his side. When the family fled Sui and County, he took his wife, second son and daughter with him. Only his eldest son, who had a family and a career, was left behind. The eldest son, Qingsun, was called Gong Luo. His temperament was like heaven and earth compared to his second son. Xiaoyu asked me if I have an elder brother and even indirectly asked about him. Qing Yuan was a little baffled, suspecting that his elder brother and Xiaoyu were old friends. Elder brother has been an official for many years and rarely comes home. I don't know much either. Could it be that Xiaoyu is an old acquaintance of elder brother? Or should I say, where have I heard of your name? Qing Cheng's expression changed when he heard that. He looked at his son with pity in his eyes. He knew his eldest son very well. His son was very particular about his family background. His circle of friends would never coincide with Su Ku's, let alone know him. When Su Ku asked if Qing Yuan had an older brother, the greatest possibility was that he wanted to kidnap him. Qing lowered his eyes. Not only did he kidnap the old one, but he also wanted to kidnap the boss. Yes, very good. With Gong Luo's temperament, I'm afraid he's not suitable. Qing Yuan's eyes suddenly widened. After his father's guidance, he finally understood Su Ku's true purpose. Big brother won't come. Qing secretly pouted. As long as Jiang Pingji was not out of her mind, she would never accept Qing Sun. Father, I heard that the Lord will lead the army to rescue the Emperor tomorrow. You want to go with me? Qing asked calmly. I want to meet him, but based on the current situation, it's probably impossible. Qing Yuan did want to go, but he also knew that he would not be of any use if he went. Rescuing the Emperor was not a small matter. There would be a chaotic battle at any time. He lacked experience and was still too inexperienced. Qing said, the situation in the world is already chaotic. Rescuing the Emperor will be an important turning point. You don't have to join in the fun. You won't be able to help and will only add to the chaos. Qing Yuan looked depressed. He had been dealt a blow by his old father. Qing said in a low voice, however, if you want to stand out, this is also a good opportunity. Father, please give me some pointers. Wanzhou has just been taken and the foundation is unstable. The Lord wants to transfer a portion of the elites to rescue the Emperor, which means that the troops left to guard the rear will be seriously insufficient. If we want to alleviate the crisis, we can only recruit troops and train the elites at the same time. This shows how much pressure there is. But as long as we can survive the initial period, the Lord's power in the north will be completely stabilized. Do your job well and be pragmatic. When the time comes, no one can erase your share of the rewards. Remember, don't be as eager for quick success as your brother. Stability is the most important. Qing analyzed his son clearly and did not forget to give him a warning. He did not like officialdom, but both of his sons had their own ideas. He could only use his own experience to give them some advice. It was a pity that his eldest son disliked him. There was a lot of friction between the father and son. His youngest son was obedient and easy to coax. He had a gentle temperament and could listen to his advice. On the other side, Jiang Pingji had also decided on the lineup for rescuing the Emperor. Jing Rong used to work under Prince Changshu's camp, so I know them better. You are indispensable this time. Jiang Pingji was the first to call out Yang Si. Indeed, as the audience in the live streaming room Old Song had said, the strategists had not objected because they had thought of Lu Shi. Lu Shi also responded to the call to rescue the Emperor. Jiang Pingji had only brought 10,000 troops with her, but if she joined hands with her father Lu Shi to participate in the alliance meeting to rescue the Emperor, could the number of participants be stronger than the father and son? According to the original plan, Jiang Pingji had intended to bring 15,000 to 20,000 soldiers and horses. However, after further analyzing the situation in Wanzhou, she dispelled that idea. Feng Jin and the others did not know, But Jiang Pingji knew very well that her enemies were not only in the open but also in the dark. The enemies on the surface were easy to deal with, but the enemies in the dark were very troublesome. Considering the situation in Wanzhou, Jiang Pingji chose the more reliable plan after making repeated choices. It was indeed unseemly to bring 10,000 troops to participate in the alliance meeting to rescue the emperor, but Jiang Pingji was certain that no one would dare to look down on her. "I wish you victory in advance, my lord." Jiang Pingji smiled and said, "Let's work hard together." Before the meeting was adjourned, Jiang Pingji called out to Wei Xiai. "Zixiao, stay here for a while. I need your help with something." Yang Si stared at his friend's face with a complicated gaze. In the end, he was dragged away by Feng Zhen. After leaving the government office, Feng Zhen tucked his hands into his sleeves, a wanton smile on his face. "Yang Jingrong, you haven't married yet. Is there something you can't say?" Yang Si rolled his eyes impatiently. Feng Zhen was going to be his partner for a while, so he could not give him face. "What do you mean?" Feng Zhen smiled and said, "I really noticed that you glanced at Zixiao a total of 22 times today. It's like a bolt from the blue." Yang Si's legs turned to jelly and he almost fell down the steps. "You wastrel, do you think everyone is like you?" Yang Si was so angry that even his beard was about to curl up. Feng Zhen smiled, a strange light flashing in his eyes. "Although I'm a wastrel, I don't like men." Yang Si swung his sleeves angrily. "I don't like that either." Feng Zhen snorted and put his hand on Yang Si's shoulder to coax him to the side. He asked in a low voice, "Did you notice something?" Yang Si's heart skipped a beat. His face turned slightly green and he pretended to hide it. "What do you mean notice something? I still have things to do, so I won't bother you." "Zixiao and the Lord, is there something going on between you two?" The corners of Feng Zhen's lips curled up and he said in a declarative tone, "During today's meeting, not only did you look at Zixiao 22 times, but you also glanced at the Lord 23 times vaguely. Tell me, what interesting thing did you notice?" Yang Si almost suffocated. Cooperating with such a gossipy wastrel during the alliance meeting was like being retarded. "If you're curious, ask them yourself." Feng Zhen folded his sleeves helplessly. "I asked, but the Lord and Zixiao denied it outright. You know what kind of people they are. I don't want to play tricks with them. I wanted to get something out of them, but I accidentally lost myself." Yang Si secretly snorted. He also didn't want to play tricks with Feng Zhen. Feng Zhen was shameless, but he still wanted to save face. Feng Zhen said, "Some time ago the chef came up with a new dish. It's sweet and sour and it's very appetizing. Don't you want to try it?" Yang Si was speechless. She couldn't move him with words, so she changed to tempting him with delicacies. Did he, Yang Jingrong, look like the kind of person who would lose all integrity for the sake of food? "Well, let's go. It's almost lunchtime." Yang Si strode forward with a smile on his face. He had thought it through. According to Jiang Pingji, she wanted to reveal her true identity. Why not test Feng Zhen's foundation first? The two of them had been appointed to go to war, so it wasn't strange for them to eat together. Why couldn't they discuss countermeasures while eating? Neither of them were people who followed the rules. They didn't talk during meals. It was fine if there were outsiders around, but it was fine if there were no outsiders. When Feng Zhen heard Yang Si's speculation, his lungs were almost blocked by the tenderloin, and he coughed so hard that it shook the heavens and the earth. "Jingrong, are you making a fool out of me?" Feng Zhen's image was a mess. He didn't have that kind of good or evil aura. Instead, he had the aura of a Chunibu. "You suspect that the Lord is a woman? That's the biggest joke in the world. Let me tell you, if a woman looks like the Lord, she won't be able to find a husband in this lifetime. I reckon that she can only become a bandit, rob houses, and forcefully kidnap a man from a good family to be her husband." Yang Si was speechless. Feng Zhen couldn't help but recall the scene of him and Jiang Pingji secretly drinking and eating meat. The Lord does look a little feminine, but no matter how you look at him, he's clearly a man. When I first came, Fengyi County wasn't so busy. The Lord and I drank together in private and went to brothels many times. Whenever the Lord was around, the courtesans couldn't be bothered to look at anyone else. Whatever obscene lyrics and songs, what common folk stories, what dirty talk, the Lord would just open his mouth. You say, this kind of old gluttonous person immersed in the mortal world is a woman? Do you believe it? Xianxia was speechless. Chapter 674. Feng Zhen's evidence was sufficient. Xianxia didn't know how to refute it. Could it be that his lord was just teasing him? But if that was the case, how could he explain Wuxia? Could it be that these two were so bored that they teamed up to trick him? It's up to you whether you believe it or not. Xianxia didn't have any concrete evidence. He could only deal with it like this. If my lord is really a woman, Feng Zhen's eyes narrowed. If she's really a woman, I'll immediately go to the streets and drag someone home to marry to protect my chastity. Feng Zhen's words left him speechless. Xianxia laughed dryly. Don't worry. I don't think anyone will be interested in you. Feng Zhen returned a smile. He felt safe. That's true. With a good man like Zixiao by his side, he won't be interested in someone like me. Xianxia, the two of them looked at each other in the guest house. There was a bewildered silence. After a while, Feng Zhen asked uncertainly, "About my lord, how confident are you?" Xianxia answered, 100%. After all, the person involved had already admitted it. But he couldn't answer like that. He said vaguely, more than 60%. Feng Zhen restrained his teasing attitude. His expression turned serious and his tone became strangely oppressive. Are you here to tell me the truth? Xianxi's hair stood on end. On the surface he smiled sincerely. Of course it's a joke. Feng Zhen raised his eyebrows. A strange light flashed in his eyes. If Xianxia had insisted on his previous words, he would have thought that he was joking. After all, the fact that his lord was a woman was too shocking. Now that Xianxia said it was a joke, Feng Zhen didn't dare to treat it as a joke. But he didn't pursue the matter. Firstly, it was meaningless. Secondly, it was a waste of time. If he wanted to know whether his lord was a man or a woman, the most irrefutable evidence was his body. If Feng Zhen was really curious, he could just ask those prostitutes. As he thought of this, his brows furrowed imperceptibly. If he hadn't mentioned this, he wouldn't have noticed a detail. Speaking of which, whenever his lord visited a brothel, he had never really stayed overnight. He didn't even hire a prostitute to sleep with him. Every time he treated the brothel as a restaurant. He would leave after eating and drinking. Feng Zhen chewed on the rice. It tasted like wax and his thoughts drifted away. His lord was in the prime of his life and was at the age where it was easy to be aroused. It was difficult for a young body to withstand the provocation of the opposite sex. Although those flower girls were not heavenly beauties, they were still in the prime of their lives and had a unique youthful aura. This kind of aura was far more attractive than their figure and appearance. Not to mention others, Feng had come from this age. If he was a normal man, wouldn't he be aroused? It would be fine if the lord had a concubine or a tongfang in her backyard. After all, some people felt that the flower girls were not clean. Even if their throats were on fire, they would still pretend that nothing happened and endure it to go home to find their wives and concubines. However, there was nothing in the lord's backyard. It was clean. Now that he thought about it, there were suspicious points everywhere. Otherwise, the lord is Liu Shihui, a true gentleman who has no desires and is unruffled even when he is in love. Either that or the lord was incompetent and couldn't stand up in the face of heavenly beauty. If it was the second one, it would be a pain in the ass. If he couldn't stand up, he wouldn't be able to give birth to an heir. Without an heir, it would mean that he wouldn't have a foundation. Or the lord wasn't a man. He or she was a woman. Faced with these three situations, Feng Zhen hoped it was the first, but looking at the lord's old tricks, she didn't seem like a pure gentleman at all. Could it be that the lord was really a woman? Pasting the female label on Jiang Pingji, Feng Zhen felt his legs tremble. He felt like he was going to be scared stiff. It was too scary. At the same time, Feng Zhen was still struggling with the mystery of his lord's gender. Jiang Pingji was discussing it with Wuxia. There's no other reason for keeping you here. I heard that Zixiao's painting skills are excellent, so please do a painting for me. Compared to the wild imagination of Xianxia and the others, the two people involved didn't have any abnormalities. Painting? Wuxia asked, what does my lord want to paint? Jiang Pingji said, green bricks. To be precise, it should be a house made of green bricks. Wuxia furrowed his brows in deep thought. The audience in the streaming room was also at a loss. The streamer didn't give any hints, so how could they guess? My lord wants to sell green bricks? After all, they were an old couple in their previous lives. Plus, Wei Xi's IQ wasn't low, so he figured out the truth in an instant. Other people's alliance meetings were to fight for benefits, but his lord was probably participating in the alliance meetings to cheat others. No, how much profit can be made from selling green bricks? Jiang Pingji revealed a smile that Wei Xi was very familiar with. It was the prelude to cheating people. I want to sell the technique of making green bricks. Green bricks are made of mud, not gold. They're big and heavy. How much can they be sold for? If the technique of making green bricks is sold, we can make a profit. What do you think of this suggestion? Wei Xi frowned. According to normal thinking, he didn't agree. However, the person who made this suggestion was his lord. She must have her own considerations behind it. He couldn't beat her to death. Faced with Jiang Pingji, Wei Xi habitually thought about it over and over again. He didn't want to make any mistakes. After a while, Wei Xi asked out of nowhere, "Who does my lord want to sell it to?" The smile on Jiang Pingji's face became more radiant. She knew that Wei Xi had seen through her intentions. "I'll give priority to whoever's territory is closer to Wanzhou." Wei Xi was speechless. His lord's heart had indeed turned completely black. Just as Jiang Pingji said, green bricks were good for construction. Its raw materials were also very cheap, but it had a problem. The transportation cost was almost 100 times higher than the production cost. In other words, if one wanted to use green bricks for construction, they had to build a brick kiln locally. Jiang Pingji sold the technique of making green bricks. This was a very obscure trap. She made the enemy take advantage of her. They contributed manpower and money, dragging down the enemy's pace of development. This was the first reason. When Jiang Pingji stabilized her foundation and completely digested the forces in Wanzhou, she would turn around and attack the enemy again. After taking over, she wouldn't even have to worry about post-war construction. This was the second reason. Because of the horse plague, the economy of the 3 tribes of the northern borderline has hit rock bottom. The horse farms are almost barren, and their combat power has been reduced by 80% to 90%. If they want to recover, it will take 3 to 5 years. Before that, we have to consolidate our power in Wanzhou and further expand our territory. Jiang Pingji's target was still the 3 tribes of the northern borderline. However, with the military strength of Chongzhou, Wanzhou, and Hu County, it was impossible to completely destroy the northern borderline. Therefore, she still needed to grow further. Or she could think of ways to weaken the enemy at the same time. Jiang Pingji narrowed her eyes as she thought about it. "Zixiao, what else do you think the northern borderline relies on besides cavalry and horses?" Wei Xi met her eyes and said calmly, "Pasture." Jiang Pingji said, "You understand me very well." The two of them looked at each other and smiled. Everything was said without words. The audience in the streaming room shuddered in unison. Chapter 675. Bad-tempered and rude Xiao Shiqin. To be honest, I've been lurking in the livestream room for quite some time. I thought I was used to all kinds of situations, but I still got blown up. To deal with the nomads, you actually dared to lay your hands on their lifeblood. Dare I ask what color your heart is? Lao Ciji Lianming. Violent and rude Xiao Shiqin. Hashtag 000000. Hashtag 000000. What does that mean? Purple Fantasy Starfall. Number 000000. This is the color code of pure black. Question: dare I ask what color is the host's heart? Pure black. There didn't seem to be any problems. Pitiful sigh. What's wrong with pure black? I like all colors of my host's heart. Dark ones are cute too. If he wanted to live a good life, how could he not have some color? Although I'm always hugging the livestream room and scolding the streamer for being trash. In fact, I'm always shouting in my heart that the streamer is so handsome and that the streamer should marry me. I just love to see her trick people and the helpless look on her face. So cute and handsome. Melon Seller Wangpa. No matter what, the host was the commander of the Interstellar Federation in her previous life. She's a big shot in the military. Her heart is definitely not empty. Can you imagine a pure and flawless army commander? How could they defeat their enemies and competitors? Maternal love. The tactics used by soldiers to deal with the enemy could not be called vicious tactics. This was called strategic deployment. Tell me, streamer, how do you plan to cheat the northern borderline? I'll support you even if my phantom limbs harden. What the F asterisk CK, even if your phantom limbs are stiff, you still have to hold on. Jiang Pingji was worried about the integrity of the streaming room. Would such filthy bullet screens really not affect minors? Along with the wave of reward notifications, countless funny comments floated across the screen. Jiu, the members of the grass digging team are here to report. Which grassland are we going to dig? Make sure not to leave a single blade of grass for the enemy. Kai Huang's ice cream cone. The captain of the national grass digging team is here to report. I guarantee that the grasslands will be barren. Mu Qingchen. The grass digging team is out for battle. I guarantee that no grass will grow. Earth was also stripped bare, leaving nothing for the enemy. Jiang Pingji looked at the bullet screen. Even though she looked calm on the surface, she could not take it anymore. These clowns, Wei Xi frowned. His words pulled Jiang Pingji's thoughts back. But my lord, did the pasture also suffer from a large-scale disease? Wei Xi thought that Jiang Pingji wanted to create an artificial grass disease to deal with the north borderline, so he frowned tightly. Jiang Pingji laughed and said, I do, but does your lord look like such a cruel person? Leave some leeway so that we can meet again in the future. If he tormented the northern borderline to death, wouldn't he be the one who would be tired? Besides, your lord can't get that kind of thing. The northern borderline was vast, and the rich grasslands were all controlled by the northern borderline tribes. They had just suffered a great loss not long ago, and the horse farm's chances of survival were almost cut off. They would be even more cautious in their actions. If we openly deal with them now, isn't that just asking for trouble? As an outstanding hunter, she knew very well that before the bullet rushed out of the muzzle and into the heart of the prey must not feel a trace of killing intent. If she wanted to plot against the northern borderline, especially the northern borderline which was on high alert, she needed to hide her murderous intent. After all, she still had a group of little princesses waiting to be fed, so she had to be cautious. Wei Xi cleared his mind of distracting thoughts and used a declarative tone. The Lord already has a countermeasure. Jiang Pingji said, naturally. I also intend to leave this matter to you because you won't let me down. Except for a few generals, the other strategists were all black-hearted. Excluding Yang Si and Feng Zhen, who needed to follow the army, Jiang Pingji carefully considered Qiguan Rang, Suku Feng Jin and Wei Xi. After careful consideration she chose Wei Xi. Why? Because this person was like her. Before plotting against someone he could restrain his evil thoughts very well until the moment the enemy died. Humans would always be biased towards their own kind, and Jiang Pingji was no exception. Wei Xi looked serious and bowed to ask for guidance. Please instruct me, my lord. Jiang Pingji said, come closer. Wei Xi stared at her and the two looked at each other for a while. There's no one here, my lord can speak frankly. In the end it was Wei Xi who gave in. He respectfully knelt beside her, and the distance between the two was closer than ever. When Jiang Pingji leaned close to his ear and whispered, her warm breath blew on his earlobe, which was dyed an abnormal blood red. His body heated up. His hands were placed on his knees, and they were tightly clenched into fists under the cover of his wide sleeves. When she finished speaking, Wei Xi had the illusion of a lack of oxygen, as if he had soaked in a hot spring for 2 hours. His brain was faintly dizzy. Jiang Pingji saw his reaction and asked with a smile, do you understand now? Wei Xi blinked and bowed his head respectfully. He regained his composure in an instant. I won't let you down, my lord. Jiang Pingji smiled and squinted her eyes. I know you won't let me down. She left out the word high hopes. Her words sounded a little annoying. Wei Xi looked down and pretended not to know. He used his willpower to restrain the abnormality, but his body loyally betrayed him. Because she was the streamer, the audience could hear her clearly no matter how soft her voice was. Some insensitive viewers were still immersed in Jiang Pingji's conspiracy, and did not notice the interaction between the two. Xianxia, you're evil. Streamer, you're so evil. Aren't you afraid of leading children astray? I become a butterfly and fly away. Isn't it popular to set up a black-bellied character? Be it a domineering CEO's delicate wife or a black-bellied prince's arrogant concubine. If the streamer's gender was changed, she would definitely be the world's male god. How many fans would seek death for her? Huohua, don't go off topic. Is there any guru who can analyze if the streamer's plan is feasible? Using the economy to indirectly destroy the ecology of the northern borderline. The streamer who came up with such a sinister idea is really awesome. Very well, the title of Heart Goddess will be given to the streamer. There were 150,000 viewers in the streaming room, and there were viewers from all walks of life. Many of them were idle spectators, but there was no lack of gurus. Sun Yu is not a go-he, my personal opinion. The feasibility is very high. The horse farms of the 3 tribes of the northern borderline have been destroyed by the horse plague. Their economy has suffered a huge blow. Not only the owners of the horse farms, but even the small-scale herdsmen have suffered huge losses. The former are still okay. After all, a starving camel is still bigger than a horse. But what about the herdsmen who operate on a small scale? Their lives are more difficult. This audience member analyzed seriously, but his ID made people laugh. Sun Yu is not a go-he, the horse plague is not a man-made disaster. It is a natural disaster. It has spread throughout the entire northern borderline. The economic losses are incalculable. Who will make up for this economic loss? The royal court of the northern borderline? Obviously not. Even in a society like ours, once a national economic loss occurs, almost all walks of life will collapse. Even if the state wants to compensate, the amount that can be compensated is limited, not to mention in the streamer's backward era. Each family can only think of ways to make up for the losses themselves. That's really a case of suffering in silence. Chapter 676. Sun Yu is not a go-he. Do you think the herdsmen will let go of an opportunity to improve their family's economy? Obviously it's impossible. The northern borderline originally bred rabbits and sheep, but the scale was very small because they had to give most of the pasture resources to horses. Now that horses were scarce, the spare pasture resources could not be wasted. Why not breed sheep and rabbits that could make money? As long as the herdsmen of the northern borderline could breed more rabbits and sheep, Jiang Pingji's plan would be half completed. With the thinking of the ancients, they could not understand the core of this overt plot. They would only realize it after the harm was done. Was it because the ancients were stupid? Of course not. It was because of the unequal information between the 2 eras. To put it bluntly, the core of this evil plan was to destroy the ecological balance. What was ecological balance? In a biological community and its ecosystem, various opposing factors restrained each other to achieve a relatively stable balance. A small number of rabbits and sheep had limited damage to the ecology of the grassland. The grassland could completely rely on its own ability to recover. However, what if a large number of rabbits and sheep appeared in a short period of time? They were very good at eating grass and could even gnaw on the grass roots. Once a large number of them flooded, it could even cause the grassland to rapidly degenerate. However, the 3 tribes of the northern borderline were not stupid. Once the destructive power of the rabbits and sheep became obvious and threatened the survival of the horses, it was impossible for them not to think of ways to curb it. If they were really stupid, Jiang Pingji would remind them at the right time. In other words, when the time came, the northern borderline had to use part of their energy to curb the overflow of rabbits and sheep. In this way, Jiang Pingji's goal would be achieved. It would not seriously damage the ecology of the northern borderline, but it could also curb the development of the cavalry of the northern borderline and distract them. Could be considered as killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Don't disclose this matter first. Jiang Pingji smiled. You can treat it as an ordinary business. Anyway, we consume a lot of wool every autumn and winter. Therefore, buying things like wool from the northern borderline won't arouse suspicion. For a hunter, patience was a very important quality. As an excellent hunter, she did not lack such things. Wuxia lowered his eyelids. I will listen to your arrangements. If the purpose was exposed early and everyone knew about it, no matter how powerful the plan was, it would be empty talk. According to her own words, Wuxia knew that danger lurked everywhere around her. There were very few people she could trust wholeheartedly. How could he let her down? Under the witness of 150,000 viewers, Jiang Pingji and Wuxia reached a tacit understanding. Being targeted by these 2 people, the outcome of the northern border could be imagined. Even though he was sold, he still happily helped the person earn money. Before Wei Xi left, Jiang Pingji reminded him again. Zixiao, don't forget the painting I want. Make it as beautiful as you can. I believe in your painting skills. Do you still remember why Jiang Pingji asked Wei Xi to come? She asked Wei Xi to draw a picture for her, emphasizing the uses of the green bricks so that she could promote the technology of firing the green bricks to the feudal vassals who came to rescue the emperor. Wei Xi did not disappoint her. The next day he presented a long scroll of painting. You finished it so quickly? As she spoke, she unfolded it and found that the ink was not new. It was not a recent painting at all. Jiang Pingji asked carefully and found out that Wei Xi's hobbies were more refined. Painting was just one of them. There were 150,000 viewers in the live broadcast room. There were people from all walks of life and many of them were artists or related fields. As soon as they saw Wei Xi's painting, they became a little uneasy and sent bullet screen comments to express their doubts. Cola chicken wings. I'll brag about Beauty Ci first. He's good at calligraphy and painting. He doesn't deceive me. However, do you feel that something is wrong? Egg fried Dao Pao. What's wrong? I just think that his painting is very beautiful. It's so beautiful that it's like he's added a lot of filters. Sweet and sour pork tenderloin. After what you said, I also think that Beauty Ci's painting is a little strange. Is it too beautiful? Everyone spoke one after another. At the same time, they did not forget to ask Jiang Pingji to completely unfold the painting to let them see it clearly. They felt that they seemed to have discovered a secret. Man can't forget his roots. I study fine arts and have some research on traditional painting. Although the host's history is different from ours, many of the trajectories are still the same, including painting. Our ancient Chinese painting art rarely sticks to superficial similarities in shape. We pay attention to, the wonderful thing is between the resemblance and the dissimilarity, and the resemblance of the dissimilarity. We tend to pursue artistic conception rather than realism. However, if you look closely at Beauty Ci's painting, don't you see a kind of vivid three-dimensional feeling? The painting style leans towards realism. It is indeed very strange. When this opinion was published, it immediately received the approval of most people. Of course, a small number of people expressed doubts. Lulu Buwang Zhengwo. Although it leans towards realism, the style is still unique to China. I don't feel that it's out of place. Instead, I feel that it's very harmonious. If you suspect that Beauty Ci is a time traveler or something, the hole in your brain is a little too big. Jiang Pingji secretly frowned and helped Wei Xi smooth things over. Host V. When I was in Langyi, I had an exchange of painting skills with him. I guess it was that time that influenced him. The audience cheered and praised Jiang Pingji for not only being able to fight, argue and fight, but also having more artistic cells than others. Jiang Pingji smiled and rolled up Wei Xi's painting. She squinted her eyes like a fox. Wei Xi did not know what had happened. A faint chill ran down his spine. On that day the cold wind was biting cold. The flags were blown by the strong wind until they made a thunderous sound. The army set off. Jiang Pingji led the troops into battle. More than 10,000 troops and horses passed through the pure white snow and disappeared into the horizon. Zhongzhou was the most powerful of the 5 countries in the Central Plains. It had a strong economy and a vast territory. Dongqing had a total of 6 prefectures and 21 counties. Zhongzhou had 10 prefectures and 33 counties. However, as the leader of the 5 countries, Zhongzhou had not been having an easy time in recent years. The struggle between the factions was getting more and more intense. The situation in the court was changing rapidly. The aristocratic families, the relatives of the emperor, and the eunuchs were fighting non-stop. Blood flowed like a river. The less powerful aristocratic families were jittery. They did not dare to interfere in the court's affairs, talk about the people's livelihood, or delve into the ways of governance. They were afraid that they would say something wrong and lose their heads. These struggles were secondary. They were too distant for the common people. However, there was one thing that was closely related to them. Many people who were suffering turned their faces and spat when they mentioned this person. The Empress of Zhongzhou, the Du family, was a noble daughter of a noble family. It was rumored that this person was as beautiful as a fairy. Her talent and moral character were unparalleled. Although she was a woman, she could argue and compete with the great scholars of the time. After becoming the Empress, she set an example and made a great vow to educate all the women in the world. She studied painstakingly for many years and finally wrote 4 classics: Women's Commandments, Internal Instructions, Women's Analects, and Women's Exemplary Records. These 4 books were highly respected by the great scholars of Zhongzhou and the vast number of scholars. Therefore, they were collectively known as the 4 self-accomplishment classics for women. For a time they were popular in Zhongzhou. They were sought after by the aristocratic ladies of the aristocratic families. Everyone had a set and regarded it as the supreme standard. Some people admired it, but naturally there were people who opposed it. However, when faced with the trend of the entire country, the voices of opposition were like mosquitoes. They were instantly drowned out. Zhongzhou, in a small town outside the imperial city. In a tea house, a man in gray sat at the table. He had a long object wrapped in cloth by his hand. You're tuning in to the Zhou Xian's Legacy YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.